So allow me, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, to thank you for participating in this extraordinary online meeting of COSAC. You are all aware of the circumstances which inevitably led to the cancellation of the plenary meeting, which was supposed to take place today here in Nicosia. This, in fact, was a confirmation of the role that the Iranian regime and its proxies have been playing throughout the region as a major destabilizing force. This is a regime which has supported terror groups, brutally suppressed its own people, and was bent on acquiring nuclear weapons and a massive ballistic missile arsenal. Fortunately, I'm pleased to say that there has been no other incident since the single drone strike in the British airbase on the island at the beginning of this month. The situation is now safe. The airspace and the airports are operating unusual, and the tourist arrivals have begun. Of course, security and defense measures have been enhanced significantly through the deployment of our own air defenses, and especially through the deployment of air and naval forces from several EU partners, including from Greece, France, Italy, Spain, the Netherlands, as well as the UK itself. We are grateful to all our partners for this tangible act of support. In fact, I strongly believe that this crisis, just like the Russian invasion of Ukraine, highlights the need for a stronger, cohesive, and strategically autonomous union which will be able to safeguard freedom and security throughout the continent and to effectively act on the global stage. And this is exactly why, despite the cancellation of our plenary meeting, we took the initiative to call for this teleconference as an opportunity for us to discuss the challenges and the prospects for our common security. In this respect, let me say that it is imperative that we work for a more effective and credible CFSP and CSDP based on our common values, interest, and on a strong sense of solidarity and purpose amongst the member states and partner countries. This becomes an urgent necessity considering the rise of geopolitical tensions and the growing global uncertainty and challenges posed by authoritarian and revisionist powers. And nowhere is this more obvious than in Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. And on this matter, I look forward to hearing from my friend and colleague Ivana Klimpush from the Parliament of Ukraine, and from Charles Goerens, the Vice Chair of the AFCO committee in the European Parliament. I would also point out that the southern shores of the Mediterranean and the Middle East are also geopolitically significant regions that can either breed conflict and challenges for European security, or become regions of cooperation and opportunities. Peace in the Middle East, based on the comprehensive peace plan for Gaza and the full disarmament of Hamas, leading to Israeli and Palestinian people living side by side in a two-state solution, should be the way forward. I would thus call for a strong and lasting EU engagement in the area, given that peace, security, stability, and prosperity of the region are interlinked with the Union's own security and stability. Here, our discussion will be led by Dimitris Geridis, a professor of international relations and the vice chair of the Foreign and Defense Committee of the Hellenic Parliament, and we shall also have the chance to hear briefly from the Commissioner on the Mediterranean, Dubravka, Suica. However, before commencing, it gives me a great pleasure to introduce to you the President of the House of Representatives of the Republic of Cyprus, Anita Dimitriou. Colleagues, please note that there is simultaneous interpretation into all official languages of the European Union. And also, I would like to remind you that the proceedings will be broadcasted live and recorded. Live streaming, press releases, and official photos will be available on the website of our House of Representatives. Madam President, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, dear Harris, dear colleagues. Europe is here, Cyprus is here, European, Western, and closely linked. What affects one affects us all. It is both an honor and a pleasure to welcome you to the Interparliamentary Videoconference in the framework of COSAC. Although it was not initially intended, the House of Representatives has moved this meeting online, as was correctly mentioned by the President. Not, of course, because Cyprus is considered to be an unsafe country, but due to the disruption of flights to Cyprus aimed at the conflict in the Middle East. This reminds us that we are living through a difficult and turbulent period, which is unfortunately connected to the influence and challenges of social media, misinformation, and toxicity. Therefore, it is our duty to act with seriousness and responsibility and inspire trust among citizens. Cyprus holds a geostrategic, economic, and security importance at the crossroads of Europe, Asia, and Africa. Position makes it a hub for trade, energy, and defense operations, and in a region often marked by instability, Cyprus remains a pillar of stability. Cyprus is fully implementing its national STIA plan to facilitate the evacuation of European and third country nationals as the Middle East conflict escalates. The government coordinates closely with partners to provide humanitarian facilities, acting responsibly in these challenging circumstances. The presidency of the EU Council offers Cyprus the chance to address key issues including geopolitical conflicts, irregular migration, energy insecurity, and economic instability, and their impact on all member states. At a time of heightened tensions, coordinated European action is a must, and it is essential. As the southeasternmost EU member, Cyprus is a stable, democratic, and a reliable partner in a historical volatile region. It monitors Middle Eastern developments and contributes to regional stability. Despite its proximity to Asia and Middle East, Cyprus' cultural, political, and economic orientation is European. Cyprus must continue initiatives that strengthen its role as a diplomatic bridge, fostering partnerships between the EU and Middle Eastern countries. Diplomatic and security dialogue is crucial during this turbulent period, and cooperation should focus on reliable partners sharing EU values and principles. A European Union enjoying strategic autonomy in defense, security, technology, economy, and energy should guide policies towards a stronger, more resilient union capable of acting as an independent global actor. Dear colleagues, the Mediterranean region faces severe interconnected challenges. The European Union is called to demonstrate its ability to address complex crises through collective action by turning plans into tangible solutions, especially during this demanding period of our region. Recent developments show that Europe must lead and can act as a catalyst. Cyprus' challenges are European challenges, and Europe's challenges are also Cyprus' challenges. What happens in Cyprus matters to Europe, just as Europe's decisions matter to Cyprus. The political guidelines for 2024-2029 European Commission provide a strategic compass focusing on sustainable prosperity, competitiveness and security. Key priorities include strengthening the EU defense union, enhancing industrial competitiveness, addressing labor and skills gaps, promoting a union of skills, and safeguarding social justice, environmental sustainability, and democratic values. The Pact for the Mediterranean, adopted with this framework and launched in late 2025, strengthens relations between the EU and Southern Mediterranean partners. It promotes sustainable investment, economic growth, clean energy, and joint approaches to security and migration management. Given current tensions, immediate and concrete implementation on its goals is essential. Open dialogue allows parties to understand each other's perspectives and identify common ground. Declarations, agreements, and policy frameworks must serve as catalysts for action rather than remain symbolic gestures. Therefore, decisive action is imperative. The Mediterranean crisis challenges the EU and calls for solidarity to build a stronger and a more secure Europe. It also demands adherence to international law, European values, and respect for territorial sovereignty, especially during this period of regional instability. Ukraine exemplifies territorial violation as Cyprus does. You all know that since July 1974, over 30% of the Republic of Cyprus has been under illegal military occupation by Turkey following a military invasion. The island, our island, remains divided, and Cyprus therefore feels solidarity with Ukraine and has been steadfast in supporting its efforts to safeguard sovereignty, territorial integrity, and international law principles. Regarding now our neighborhood and the escalating Middle East situation, I call on the European Union to actively promote de-escalation through urgent diplomacy to prevent wider conflict, protect civilians, and safeguard energy supply chains. Responsible, coordinated action is essential at this critical moment. COSAC provides an important forum for European citizens' representatives to engage in dialogue, declare political commitments, and define shared priorities. A forward-looking approach combining internal strength with openness, cooperation, and engagement remains essential. Dear colleagues, dear President, in unity, we can confront every challenge, defend our values and principles, and build a future of peace, prosperity, and security of all. Without further ado, I warmly wish you fruitful deliberations and thank you very much for your attention. Mr. President.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you for your message and for your introduction. And before continuing, I would also like to extend a special welcome to Mr. Peter Galivoda, the chair of the EU Affairs Committee of the National Council of the Slovak Republic, who attends a COSAC meeting for the first time in this capacity. Colleagues, we now continue with Minister Nicholas Ioannidis. Nicholas Ioannidis is the Deputy Minister for Migration and International Protection of the Republic of Cyprus since 2024. He holds a PhD in public international law and he has extensive academic and professional experience in the fields of public, international, and European law. He served as a legal advisor to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs before taking over his ministerial position. The minister will present an overview of the priorities of the Cyprus presidency. Minister Ioannidis, are you with us? Do we have Minister Ioannidis? Can we try again with the minister to ensure that he's connected?
You hear me?
Yes, Minister. Now we can hear you and we can see you. Thank you for joining us. I just had the chance to introduce you, and without any further delay, I give you the floor, as I have said, for you to present the priorities of the Cyprus presidency, with an emphasis, I would say, on European security, but also the issues of the Mediterranean and maybe the issues of migration that you are handling. Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Your Excellency, President of the House of Representatives, Chair of Foreign European Affairs Committee, Honourable Chairs and members of European Affairs Committees, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honour to address you today from Nicosia during the Cyprus presidency of the Council of the European Union. At a time of significant geopolitical uncertainty, the role of national parliaments in shaping and scrutinising European policies is more important than ever. Recent developments in the wider Middle East and Gulf remind us how quickly instability in our neighbourhood can affect Europe through energy markets, possible migration pressures, security risks, economic uncertainty, and social polarisation. Cyprus has long served as a bridge between Europe and the Middle East, a country that has consistently and reliably been part of the solution to the region's challenges, never part of the problem, and a country that remains steadfastly committed to its humanitarian role, an enabler of stability and security, fervently attached to dialogue, diplomacy, and cooperation. It is precisely in this context that the priorities of our presidency acquire particular importance. Prior to delving into our priorities, let me underline this. The Cyprus presidency continues as planned. All meetings in Cyprus between April and until the end of our presidency will take place as planned. There is normalcy, safety, and life continues normally. From the outset, we set a central objective that permeates all of our priorities. A union that is more autonomous and open to the world. Already, in the third month of our presidency, we have achieved tangible results reflecting the divergence, the diligence, focus and results-oriented approach with which Cyprus exercises its institutional responsibilities. Allow me now to briefly outline progress on the 5 pillars of our programme. The first pillar is autonomy through security, defence and readiness. Russia's war against Ukraine has reinforced the need for stronger European security and defence. Under our presidency, the Council reached an agreement with the European Parliament on the regulation implementing enhanced cooperation on the establishment of the Ukraine Support Loan for 2026-2027 to address our urgent European financial needs. In the area of defence, we're working intensively to conclude the Defence Readiness Omnibus package and to reach a general approach at the June Foreign Affairs Council on the military mobility package. This package aims to strengthen Europe's defence posture by addressing regulatory, infrastructure and capability barriers that slow cross-border military transport. Security also requires protecting our democracies from foreign interference, disinformation, hybrid threats, and pressures on media freedom. our presidency is advancing the European Democracy Shield at both political and technical levels. Effective migration management is a core dimension of security. Our presidency is focused on supporting coordinated preparation across member states to ensure that the Migration and Asylum Pact is fully operational by June 2026. In parallel, we are advancing work on the returns regulation with the aim of strengthening the effectiveness of EU return policy, while promoting a balanced approach that combines responsibility, solidarity, and effective cooperation with partner countries. These efforts take place against a rapidly evolving regional context. As a member state situated at the southeastern frontier of the Union, we are Europe's front line of regional developments in the Middle East. This perspective reinforces our commitment to a stronger and more resilient Union, capable of responding effectively to emerging challenges and crisis preparedness. In this respect, we immediately activated our national evacuation plan for the evacuation of European and third country nationals from the region, and we are working since day one with our regional partners and the EU to address the maritime security dimension of this crisis, as well as to create avenues for return to diplomacy. What we saw in Cyprus last week, following the single isolated drone incident in the British bases, was European solidarity in action. Greece, France, Italy, Spain, the Netherlands contributed to creating a European protective shield. And in this regard, it is an example of European autonomy. On the second pillar, autonomy through competitiveness. Strengthening Europe's economic resilience and competitiveness is a core priority. One of the earliest deliverables of the Cyprus presidency was the adoption of 2 Council decisions authorizing the signing of the EU-Mercosur Partnership Agreement and the interim trade agreement between the EU and Mercosur, marking a major step after 25 years of negotiations. These agreements open new opportunities for businesses while safeguarding our most sensitive sectors and ensuring a fair and sustainable trading framework. We have also advanced important legislative initiatives aimed at enhancing Europe's competitiveness, including the reform of the Research Fund for Coal and Steel, which supports innovation and the green transition of industrial sectors. Simplifying the European legislative framework is also progressing across 7 legislative packages, with the objective of concluding Omnibus 5, Defence Readiness, Omnibus 4, Small Mid-Caps, Digitalisation, Common Specifications, and 6, Chemicals, before the end of our presidency. Substantial progress is expected on the remaining omnibuses. We have already achieved a negotiating mandate on 1 proposal under the Food and Feed Safety Omnibus, and last Friday, a negotiating mandate on the AI proposal under the Digital Omnibus. Regarding the single market, all priority legislative proposals are being advanced, including the European Business Wallet and the e-Declaration. Moreover, we have successfully reached a provisional agreement with the European Parliament on a targeted amendment of the regulation on the Common Market Organisation of Agricultural Products, as well as on the regulations governing the Common Agricultural Policy. By proving support for farmers and enhancing the role of producer organizations, we're giving farmers additional tools to secure a more predictable and sustainable future. Consumer protection and competitiveness go hand in hand. Our presidency led negotiations on the conclusions adopted by the Council of the EU for the 2030 Consumer Agenda, which call for stronger consumer protection, particularly online, promotion of sustainable consumptions, better enforcement, and stronger cooperation between all the relevant actors. In addition, the Cyprus presidency coordinated and reached an agreement of the EU Council position on a targeted amendment to the Market Stability Reserve for the new emissions trading system for buildings, road transport, and other sectors, enabling negotiations with the European Parliament to proceed. This issue was particularly significant for many member states. In the energy sector, work is progressing towards an agreement on the EU grids package aimed to be reached at the June Transport, Telecommunications and Energy Council, which will facilitate cross-border energy infrastructure, interconnections, and support the development of a truly integrated energy union, addressing the vital issue of high energy prices. The third pillar of our priorities is a union open to the world. Autonomy calls for a union that is open on the global stage, outward-looking and engaged, able to act from a position of strength. The Cyprus presidency has worked to deepen key international partnerships. A significant milestone was the adoption of the Council decision authorizing the signature of a comprehensive package of agreements with Switzerland, modernizing the EU-Switzerland relationship. At the same time, we continue to support enlargement, advancing accession negotiations with Ukraine, Moldova, and partners in the Western Balkans, in line with the Union's merit-based criteria. 2 IGCs for Montenegro are already taking place. Work on the IBARs for Albania is progressing, which will pave the way for closing of the first chapters, and work is underway for the establishment of the ad hoc working part for the drafting of the accession treaty for Montenegro. Front-loading of work for Ukraine and Moldova is advancing full speed. Later in the week, informal ministerials will take place under the Cyprus presidency in Brussels to present work on numerous clusters. The third pillar of our priorities is a union of values that leaves no one behind. Europe's autonomy rests on the trust of its citizens. It is a union that protects its values, strengthens the rule of law, fosters social cohesion, and responds to citizens' daily concerns. Several important achievements have been reached in this area, including a provisional agreement with the European Parliament on the regulation that seeks to broaden the scope of the European Globalization Adjustment Fund. Our presidency has successfully led negotiations on the Council conclusions, investing in children, strengthening child well-being, social inclusion, and combating child poverty in the European Union. We have also advanced the conclusions, an EU agenda for cities, driving growth and prosperity. In the area of health, we aim to reach an agreement with the European Parliament on the Critical Medicines Act to prevent shortages of essential medicines, such as antibiotics and insulin. Ministers have also discussed the initiative submitted by our presidency for the establishment of European Centre of Clinical Excellence for Pharmaceuticals, aimed at improving transparency, strengthening decision-making, and enhancing coherence among European health systems. On the issue of housing, ministers have exchanged views on housing affordability, availability, and sustainability in the context of the European Affordable Housing Plan. And in May, Cyprus will host a dedicated ministerial in Cyprus on housing. Moving to the fifth pillar of the Cyprus presidency priorities, which is a long-term budget for an autonomous union. Strategic ambition requires resources, and our work continues intensively on the negotiations of the next multi-annual financial framework, where we aim to present a mature negotiating box with figures in June European Council and reach partial general approach on the 3 main financial instruments. Ladies and gentlemen, the success of a presidency requires close cooperation between member states, EU institutions, and importantly, national parliaments. In this context, COSAC plays a valuable role in strengthening democratic legitimacy and supporting better legislation. Allow me to conclude with a simple but fundamental principle. Europe's strength lies in its unity. In a world marked by uncertainty, our ability to act together will determine our credibility, security, and prosperity. The Cyprus presidency remains fully committed to continuing acting as an honest broker, facilitating compromise and advancing solutions in the European interest. Together, European institutions and national parliaments, we can continue to strengthen a union that is resilient, competitive, outward-looking, and firmly grounded in the values that define us. For an autonomous union open to the world. Thank you.
Just always checking if the sound is on. Yes. Thank you, Minister Ioannidis, for this presentation of the priorities of the Cyprus presidency. Thank you for joining us for this online meeting. Colleagues, before we continue and before Ivana Klimpush prepares for her intervention, let me refer briefly to very briefly to a number of procedural items as these have been discussed a short while ago in a meeting of the presidential Troika. First of all, let me say that the 45th biannual report of COSAC was completed on schedule and has been circulated and uploaded to IPEX. The Troika was also informed by the permanent member of the COSAC Secretariat, Jakub Sjoval, that a voting guide for COSAC has also been prepared and circulated to delegations, and hopefully this guide will help bring more clarity to the adoption process of COSAC conclusions and contributions. I will remind you that in our previous meeting we extended an invitation to all national parliaments and chambers to renew their engagement to the co-financing agreement for the position of the permanent member of the COSAC Secretariat for years 2027 and 2028. According to the last information I have, 33 out of 39 national parliaments and chambers have already sent their signed letters of intent. We expect that the responses for the remaining parliaments will come in shortly, and the matter is therefore referred to the incoming Irish presidency. And lastly, the possibility of amending the COSAC rules of procedures is also, well, the issue remains unchanged. We still do not have the necessary unanimity. So this issue again is referred to the incoming Irish presidency. And lastly, let me mention that, of course, no COSAC contributions and conclusions will be issued from today's extraordinary online meeting. If no one wants to mention something regarding procedural issues, I will proceed with our first panel, which is Ukraine and the quest for European security. And I will ask if our good friend and colleague Ivana Klimpush is already... No, I hear that she has an issue with her connection.
No, I'm here.
Okay, Ivana, I'm sure you would make it. So I am delighted that we have the opportunity to have you in this teleconference, Ivana, and I'm sure we all look forward to hearing from you on the latest on the situation regarding Ukraine's fight for freedom, which is essentially a struggle for European freedom and security. So, Ivana, glad to see you. You have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Chair Georgiadis, distinguished speaker, dear colleagues. I'm very happy that we are having this meeting, but definitely saddened by the very fact that we could not meet personally in Nicosia that everybody was looking forward to. And I think we do feel that we are in the middle of the time that definitely requires much more serious common mobilization in terms of being capable of providing for our own security. Let me use this opportunity to remind that irrespectively of the deviation of the attention of so many countries and so many governments to the definitely very hot developments in the Middle East, the death dance by Russian Federation in its war against Ukraine and the free world is very much continuing. And, you know, just a very personal, on the very personal point, I want to tell you that this Saturday, I think hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians, especially in Kyiv and around Kyiv region, we all woke up to loud blasts and shaking of our homes and our apartments, our houses, just because Russia has waged yet another attack over the weekend, massive attack on the energy infrastructure of Ukraine and on the sleeping civilians across the region. And to tell you the truth, that is not an easy experience when you are waking up to the blast, when you are definitely scared, when you're definitely disoriented, and you hear another blast and another one and another one, and then you are just praying and thanking God and your forces, your military forces, that you are making it through this another night of that. And as you have probably watched pretty attentively, we had a very, very challenging, very difficult winter when in sub-zero temperatures, the Russian Federation has been consistently trying to destroy our energy infrastructure. So people in very, very cold winter were left without heat, electricity, water, but we made it. And we made it, and that means that Ukrainian society, Ukrainian state, with your support, remains a very resilient one. Nevertheless, we do have to also understand that all of this is happening on the backdrop of something that is called peace negotiations. And if you look into data, you will also see that, unfortunately, during 2025, year of 2025, according to the UN data, on this backdrop of this peace talks or peace negotiations, we have seen the 30% increase in the civilian casualties in Ukraine. That means that Russia is using this particular instrument to as a probably they see it as a negotiation leverage. But I hope that all of us do understand, and a lot of illusions have been already kind of ruined over this period of time when Russian Federation's war against Ukraine and the free world is continued, and that we are on the same wavelength, and the one truth is unmistakably is clear for everyone, that there is no durable European security without Ukraine, and there is no secure Ukraine outside of the European project. I do hope that majority does agree that Ukraine is fighting not exclusively for its own sovereignty, but it does fight for something that is critical for the whole European project. That means that borders cannot be redrawn by the force, that nations are free to choose their own alliances and their own future, that democracy is definitely better than tyranny, and that democracy is worth protection. So we Ukrainians are paying the highest price for all of these principles. And because we are doing so, I think we as altogether Europeans do have not only moral, but rather political self-interest, strategic duty to back the Ukrainian effort. And that has some dimensions, and I'll just outline a few of them, saying that first and foremost, Ukraine is not only a recipient of security of Europe, but is also a provider of European security. And that experience, that resilience that I was mentioning, that military innovation, that new battlefield, unfortunately, experience that we have gained, our cyber capabilities, our energy endurances, even our institutional stamina under the most difficult conditions are very important, not only for Ukraine, but also for European Union. And that means that Ukraine should not be seen as a problem to be managed, but rather a partner to be embraced, and as a country that is also seeing its future as part of the European continent in terms of being part of the European Union. Secondly, I believe that we have to, right now, when we are talking about urgent needs of Ukraine and your support that we are accepting with grace and gratitude and great appreciation, we still have to think not only about the current phase of this war, how to end it, but how to see and ensure the just and lasting real security peace on the continent. And that means that if we, for example, are leaving Ukraine at the end of this war as weak, exposed, or underarmed, or economically fragile, and not politically coupled with the Europe's core structures, that means that we are inviting the other renewed aggression and the new war. So I do hope that we are again on the same wavelength, and we do understand that those that sometimes what is seen as a kind of detached debate and the idea that we must choose between supporting Ukraine at this particular point and advancing Ukraine's accession to the European Union as two separate issues, that we do understand that this issue should not be really separated, because we have to understand that military assistance does help Ukraine to survive. Your financial assistance, which we value, does help Ukraine to function. Reconstruction helps us to recover. And what's important, the accession process is helping us to transform. And we are working on that path as hard as we are trying also to defend our country, our common principles, and also to survive. So I believe that we politicians, members of the national parliaments, do have a special responsibility in that, explaining to our societies that helping Ukraine and in this both a battle and also transformation is not some type of charity, but it's an investment in the our common European future. So I think that at this point, it's important to also remember that Ukraine and European security are interconnected, and we have to commonly decide what kind of Europe do we want to build, whether we want to have a Europe that only reacts to the crises that are erupting around, or it has a capacity and capability to shape its own strategic environment. And I'm sure that we are longing for the second one. Do we want Europe that speaks the language of values but hesitates on responsibility, or a Europe that understands that values have geopolitical consequences? Do we want Europe that sees enlargement as a burden, or Europe that sees it as one of the greatest strategic tools? I'm sure that history has already responded several times to these questions, and we are going to carry on with these positive responses as well. So by kind of summing up at this point, I want to take this opportunity to speak very, very plainly. If Europe does want security, it must help Ukraine to win peace. If Europe wants peace, it must invest in its own strength and in Ukrainian strengths as well. If Europe wants strategic credibility, it must match words with decisions. And the question is whether we are ready to build the European security order with clarity, with courage, and the unity that moments demand. Yes, I do see a lot of suggestions that we should try to seek peace with Russian Federation at the expense of Ukraine. But I hope that that's not the answer, that the majority of European nations building their decisions on the matters, on those values that are being declared, are ready to take. So therefore, I hope that we will be able to answer the way that the future generations will be not judging us by the words, but will be judging us by those strong decisions that we will take together. We are counting on all of you we are counting that that this turbulence that we are finding ourselves in will not deviate your readiness to back Ukraine, and we together should ensure that the evil of the Russia, Iran, North Korea, their other accomplices will be stopped, and that we will be able to focus on prosperity, on development, on secure future for our continent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ivana. I could not agree more, and do stay strong. We continue on the same topic with Mr. Charles Goerens, a long-standing member of the European Parliament, currently serving as Vice Chair of the AFCO Committee, the Committee on Constitutional Affairs. Earlier in his career, he served as a member of the cabinet in Luxembourg and also of the Chamber of Deputies of Luxembourg. If Mr. Charles Goerens can hear us, Charles, you have the floor.
Honourable President, honourable colleagues, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Russia's unlawful and unprovoked war of aggression against Ukraine continues to rage on the very borders of the European Union. This war is not a distant conflict. It is a defining challenge for our continent, our values, and the future of European security. Russia's objective is clear: to exhaust and subordinate Ukraine and to destabilize both the European Union and NATO. In doing so, it seeks to shatter the European security order that has preserved peace and cooperation on our continent for decades. Russia today represents a primary, credible, and lasting threat to the European Union and its member states. But Ukraine stands firm. Since 2022, Ukraine has been the shield of Europe. In defending its sovereignty and territorial integrity, Ukraine is also defending the principles that underpin our shared order: respect for international law, the inviolability of borders, and the right of nations to choose their own future. This struggle is therefore not only Ukraine's fight, it is a fight for the rules-based international order itself. For this reason, the European Union stands firmly at Ukraine's side. We do so on the moral and legal grounds, but also because our security and Ukraine's security are now deeply intertwined. Ukraine's continued resistance against the aggressor is an existential issue for Europe. The outcome of this war will have direct consequences for our own stability and security. Looking ahead, the peace we seek cannot be imposed by force or intimidation. It must be a peace rooted in dignity and international law, a just and durable settlement based on a strong, not weakened Ukrainian position. The European Union will continue to support Ukraine so that Kyiv can negotiate from a position of strength, protected from any attempt by Russia to threaten its very existence. Let's also be clear about a fundamental principle. Nothing about Ukraine's future can be decided without Ukraine. And nothing about Europe's security can be decided without Europe's direct political involvement. This is not simply a matter of fairness, it's a matter of responsibility, particularly at a time when the European Union carries a substantial share of the financial and political burden of supporting Ukraine. In this context, EU enlargement is not merely a bureaucratic process, it is a geostrategic investment in a stronger, more stable, and more united Europe. Ukraine's future lies within our European family, and through a merit-based accession process, it will contribute to a more resilient union founded on shared values. Our national parliaments and the European Parliament will play an essential role in this process as it moves toward eventual ratification. At the same time, attempts to deprive Ukraine of the financial assistance agreed by both the European Council and the European Parliament run directly against European interests. The enlargement process must never be instrumentalized to settle bilateral disputes or to delay a merit-based path forward. Such issues must be resolved in good faith and through constructive dialogue. The European Parliament has also been clear on another matter. The frozen Russian assets should ultimately be used to support Ukraine's defense, its reconstruction, and the compensation of victims. The aggressor must be deterred, held accountable, and must pay for the destruction it has caused. That is why we must continue to provide Ukraine with the military capabilities it needs for as long as it takes to end Russia's illegal war of aggression and to restore Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity within its internationally recognized borders. We do this in a difficult political context. The United States has signaled a desire to reduce its defense commitments in Europe and to adopt a more transactional approach to alliances. As a result, European countries, together with a number of global partners, are increasingly shouldering the responsibility for financing and supplying Ukraine's defense. This shift presents a challenge, but it also serves as a wake-up call. It compels Europe to step up its own efforts and strengthen its defense capabilities. In this regard, Ukraine itself will play a crucial role in Europe's future security architecture. Over the course of this war, Ukraine has demonstrated extraordinary resilience, innovation, and military capability. It is leading the way in areas such as drone warfare, counter-drone systems, and battlefield innovation. When this war ends, Ukraine will possess some of the most experienced and capable armed forces in Europe. Ukraine is therefore not merely a recipient of security, it is and will remain a provider of security for our continent. At the same time, the broader question of Europe's security architecture remains open. NATO continues to be a unique and indispensable framework for collective defense, yet it also depends fundamentally on the cooperation and commitment of our American allies. Any uncertainty in that commitment weakens our collective deterrence at the moment when unity is most needed. The European Parliament remains a strong supporter of the transatlantic alliance, but we also support a stronger role for the European Union in defense. We have called for the operationalization of the EU's mutual defense clause under Article 42, paragraph 7 of the Treaty on European Union, including the development of credible command and control capabilities under European authority. This must be done carefully, ensuring that EU efforts complement NATO rather than duplicate it. A broader debate is now underway on Europe's future security architecture, including a possible revision of the European security strategy. Our parliaments must play a central role in shaping this process. At the same time, Europe must strengthen its defense industrial base. We must build the capacity to produce the full spectrum of military capabilities within Europe through a genuine single market for defense. Here again, Ukraine is not only a beneficiary, but also a partner. Much of the industrial production supporting the war effort already takes place inside Ukraine. Several member states are supporting this directly. For example, Denmark's funding of Ukrainian defense companies. These capabilities will be essential for Europe's rearmament and for strengthening our deterrence. The European Union's new defence funding instruments now allow Ukraine to participate in common projects. This is both a step toward future enlargement and a valuable contribution to our collective defence efforts. In doing so, Europe can support Ukraine while also learning from its expertise and experience. Cooperation between the European Union and NATO has been essential in coordinating weapons deliveries to Ukraine. Transatlantic unity and determination remain vital, and coordination between EU and NATO procurement and deliveries must be further strengthened. While NATO and the EU together maintain a significant conventional advantage over Russia, we must recognize that Russia has gained extensive battlefield experience and continues to develop an aggressive military doctrine. This means we must enhance our capabilities in areas such as hybrid warfare, drones, ballistic missile defense, electronic warfare, and air defense, all areas where Ukraine's experience is invaluable. Finally, we cannot ignore the broader global context. The evolving security situation in the Middle East demonstrates that Ukraine's expertise has global relevance. Ukraine has already shown its willingness to share its experience in counter-drone warfare with partners facing similar threats. This again demonstrates a crucial point. Ukraine is not a burden. Ukraine is a security provider with enormous potential. At the same time, we have strongly condemned the assistance provided by the Iranian regime to Russia's war effort, particularly the supply of drones and military cooperation that directly fuels aggression. Yet our position must remain consistent. International law must apply everywhere. If we condemn violations of international law in one conflict, we must also do so in others. The erosion of international law in one region inevitably weakens it everywhere. Honourable colleagues, the stakes of this moment could not be higher. The future of Ukraine, the credibility of international law, and the stability of Europe's security order are all bound together. Europe must remain united, resolute, and forward-looking. By supporting Ukraine, strengthening our own defence, and standing firm in defence of international law, we are not only protecting our present, we are securing the future of our continent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Goerens. Thank you, dear colleague. Now, without any further delay, I will open the floor and I will request everyone to restrict themselves to a 1-minute intervention because we are already running a bit late. And let me first give the floor to Barry Ward, the head of the Irish delegation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and well done on organising a meeting today in very difficult circumstances. Conscious of time, I just wanted to say that I agree entirely with the last two speakers. In terms of what Ivana said, absolutely the defence of Ukraine is the defence of Europe, and I think we all understand that very acutely. And in respect of what Charles said, I think also that we need to acknowledge the strength that Ukraine has demonstrated up to this point in the face of very difficult circumstances. Ireland's support for Ukraine is very strong, and there is still great support here for the Ukrainians living in our community. And although we're restricted in what we can do in terms of military aid, we have provided a great deal of financial and non-lethal military aid. Indeed, President Zelensky was here in Dublin during the plenary session of the Copenhagen COSAC and expressed his gratitude to the Irish people. But there is always much more that we can do, and much more we can do as the European Union as well. I think there is a real danger that we will be distracted by what is happening in the Gulf. Obviously, you in Cyprus have been directly affected by that, but the effect of the US war in Iran is distracting both media and political attention from Ukraine. And then the consequent impact on energy prices is a danger in terms of distracting political attention and will towards it. But also the relaxation in terms of sanctions by the US and Russia is regrettable. So I think we as a European Union need to remain strong on this issue, committed, and redouble our efforts to sanction Russia. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. And we continue with the Parliament. I'm not sure if I said the name correctly. Ruth? Is Ruth Firmenich with us? If not, I will continue with Eric.
Yes, I am here.
Ruth,
I'm here.
okay.
I hope
go
you
ahead.
can hear me.
We do. Go ahead.
Okay.
The accession of Ukraine would have serious negative consequences for the EU and Europe. The cost of an estimated 186 billion euros would be a heavy burden for struggling economies such as Germany. Where the money ends up is unclear considering the corruption in Ukraine. In addition, there are massive shortcomings in the areas of democracy and human rights. Opposition parties are banned, dissidents are persecuted, and Russian-speaking people are discriminated against. The issue of security is highly problematic. Ukraine's accession would activate the EU's mutual assistance clause. We would be at war with Russia. This is total madness. Ukraine's accession would further strengthen the EU's militarist course, and the EU's original peace project would increasingly become an armament alliance. The fact is that the EU has not launched a single peace initiative. Instead, hostility with Russia is the order of the day, and what we need right now, especially with the US and Israel's war of aggression against Iran and exploding energy prices, is an urgent agreement with Russia and no further self-destruction through sanctions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ruth. And we continue with Erik Ottosson from Sweden. Erik Ottosson from Sweden. Is Erik connected? If not, we continue with Senator Terzi from Italy. Am I okay on the sound? Is either Erik Ottosson or Giulio Maria Terzi connected? Can I continue with Dimitrios Kouvelas from Greece? But I do see that these colleagues are connected. I see them in the list of participants. Οι άλλοι δύο είναι. Okay. Yes. Okay, let me try Pierre-Alexandre Anglade from the French National Assembly. Μήπως τους έχουμε στο σιωπηλό. Πρέπει να τους ανοίξει το μικρόφωνο. Ανοίξετε τους τα.
Haris, they are writing that I think that their microphones are not being activated.
Yes, that's what I'm noticing. Yes.
Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Do you hear me?
We do, but let me, Pierre-Alexandre, give me a second. Let's check on the mics of previous colleagues because okay. I see that they are connected. Can we open them? Can we unmute everyone? Ναι, αλλά γράφουν μας ότι είναι μέσα και εγκλειστά τα mics τους. Αυτό μας έγραψε. Okay, let's not delay, Pierre Alexandre. Let's continue with you, and hopefully we shall sort the glitch with the other colleagues. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would like to begin by expressing my full solidarity with Cyprus, which was the target of several attacks last week, and to say that when Cyprus is attacked, it is obviously Europe that is under attack. The defence of your island is obviously an essential issue for France, and with it, the European Union. Let me now turn to our debate on Ukraine. Of course, let us not be naive. The war currently unfolding in the Middle East is doing Russia's business because it allows it to sell its oil at a better price and because it diverts attention from the war in Ukraine. That is why I think it is important that we reaffirm today that no crisis or development will divert our attention from Ukraine, which remains a major security issue for us. In this context, it is in my opinion extremely important that we can defend and recall several priorities. The first priority must obviously be to make every effort in the run-up to the next European Council to release the €90 billion loan, which is obviously essential. The second major priority is to continue to increase pressure on Russia. In this regard, progress must be made on the 20th package of sanctions in order to deprive the Russian economy of means of financing. And we must also continue to show our determination to hinder the Russian fleet. I would like to say here that the US decision to lift oil sanctions is a dangerous decision because it will have repercussions on European security and it increases Russian resources, allowing them to wage their war of aggression against Ukraine. Finally, the third priority must be the continuation of our support to achieve a just and lasting peace, obviously with robust security guarantees, as I said earlier. And this is the work of the coalition of the willing that must continue in the weeks and months to come. That's what I wanted to tell you today, and I hope that European solidarity, which we have shown in recent weeks and months vis-à-vis Ukraine, will be strengthened in the light of the American disengagement, which is going to become more and more pronounced. Thank you.
For each speaker who is called will be activated by the hosts. So the moment I call a speaker, their mic will be activated. Let's try if this works, and let us try to activate the mic for Eric Ottosson from Sweden. Let's activate Eric's mic. Okay, it seems that Eric is not connected.
Can you hear me?
Eric, there you are. I mean, I'm sure I saw you connected. Yes,
Yeah.
Now we can hear you. Maybe there is a time delay of a few seconds. So let's get the hang of it. Eric, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to COSAC at the plenary today, even though we cannot be with you physically. On behalf of Sweden, I would like to give our full support to everything that has previously been said. It is vitally important that we continue to support Ukraine and that we do not allow ourselves to lose focus on the important issues concerning Ukraine, even though many other important issues around the world need to be addressed at the same time. We must also not allow ourselves to become fatigued by the fact that this is taking so much time. A victory for the Ukrainian people is absolutely crucial for European security. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric. Let me now try again to give the floor to the Italian Senate, to Senator Terzi. Is Senator Terzi connected? Let's activate his mic. Αφού γράφει μου. Senator Terzi, Italian Senate. Let's make sure.
Our focus on the war in Ukraine should not diminish in any way, even after 4 years, because our own sovereignty and democracy are based on Ukraine's sovereignty and democracy. Our support to Ukraine therefore remains a top priority. An ever closer cooperation between the EU, US, NATO and the G7 is crucial in this regard. We want a just and lasting peace so we can continue to support the people of Ukraine with determination and to put pressure on Russia. Responsibility is a fundamental principle that we cannot neglect. Russian atrocities cannot go unpunished. We strongly support the Special Tribunal for Putin's crime of aggression against Ukraine, as well as the International Claims Commission for Ukraine. A particularly painful chapter is the fate of the thousands of Ukrainian children deported to Russia and Belarus. They must be brought back to their families immediately and unconditionally. It is increasingly evident that it is important to strengthen Europe's security and defence, to invest more in defence, and to strengthen our industrial technological base, our military capabilities, and our military mobility. This includes facing hybrid threats, the manipulation of information, foreign interference, cyber attacks, threats to the electoral process, as well as the instrumentalization of migration flows. Such threats come from Iran, Russia, and China, manipulating information and distorting public opinion. Defending Ukraine means defending the future and democracy of the peoples of Europe, their right to choose their own future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. We continue with Dimitrios Kouvelas, and then will be Ricardo Carvalho from Portugal. But Dimitrios Kouvelas from the Hellenic Parliament.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, dear Harris. What is happening these days leaves no doubt that Europe must take greater responsibility for its own defense and for the stability of our wider neighborhood. The initiatives developed under the Rearm Europe plan, including instruments such as SAFE, lead to greater European strategic resilience. However, we must be particularly attentive to the framework of cooperation with third countries. We must ensure that countries which challenge sovereign rights of EU member states cannot play a role in shaping Europe's defense architecture. In addition, strengthening the strategic partnership between EU and NATO remains essential in order to ensure coherence, complementarity, and effective support for Ukraine. Finally, in order to be clear, we need a credible, resilient, and genuinely European security architecture that protects the sovereignty of all member states without exception, particularly in regions such as the southeastern Mediterranean. Thank you, dear colleagues.
Thank you, Dimitrios. We continue with Ricardo Carvalho from Portugal, and then with Rasa from Lithuania. But now, Ricardo Carvalho, please. Portugal is not in. Portugal is not in. Can we double check? Can we continue with Rasa Budbergytė, the head of the Lithuanian delegation?
Thank you, Chair. 5 years into Russia's war aggression against Ukraine, our priority remains the same: full support for Ukraine. We must increase long-term military assistance, and we must set a clear path for Ukraine's EU membership with a strategic goal of accession by 2030. When Europe's security is at stake, unity and decisive action are essential. The blockage of the Ukraine's support loan by Hungary is unacceptable. Let me underline 4 key elements for stronger European defense. Safeguard Ukraine, stay coherent with NATO, sustain spending on security and defense, and keep a strong transatlantic bond. Finally, Lithuania, being next to aggressors, Russia and Belarus, faces security, economic and social challenges. The European Commission's communication on the EU's eastern regions is crucial. Its implementation requires strong EU support and comprehensive funds, as these regions are the Union's front line and a strategic space for Europe's security, resilience, and stability. Thank you.
Thank you, dear colleague. We continue with Tomasz Grodzki from the Polish Senate, then with Gregor Koren from Slovenia. Tomasz Grodzki, please, let's unmute Thomas. I see that the mic is still on mute.
Now it's unmuted. Thank you, Harris. My short speech will be focused on Ukraine, of course, but I will speak in Polish.
Europe must take greater responsibility for its own security while maintaining close transatlantic cooperation within the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, and the European Union. It is extremely important to strengthen the European defence industry with the active participation of Ukraine, who have already achieved quite a lot in this field. Even the Americans are now asking the Ukrainians for help with anti-drone systems. Air defence, anti-missile, anti-drone technologies, cybersecurity, and artificial intelligence are of key importance in this regard. In this context, the financial instruments of the European Union play an important role, including the SAFE instrument, which shows how the Union can strengthen both defence preparedness and the production capacity of the Member States, while also deepening cooperation between Member States. There is now little time. Europe must act decisively now in order to ensure lasting security for itself as well as its partners, and bring the war in Ukraine and the war in other parts of the world to an end as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, dear Chairman. We continue with Gregor Koren from Slovenia, then followed by Anton Horfreiter from the German Bundestag. Gregor? Gregor Koren, Slovenia. Gregor, you have the floor. We can hear you. Gregor, I think you're connected. We can hear you. Can we then jump to Anton Hofreiter from the German Bundestag?
Thank you very much, Chair, and I would express my full solidarity with our hosts from Cyprus as you face completely unjustified attacks that have been taking place in Cyprus. I would like to express also my heartfelt thanks to our Ukrainian friends, and especially to Ukrainian soldiers who defend freedom for all of us, not only the freedom and lives of the people of Ukraine, but all of our freedom. I believe that we should always be aware of this and remember why we give support to Ukraine. This support is absolutely in our own interest as well. In this regard, I believe that we must also step up our efforts in acting in our own interests. We urgently need a solution to Hungary's blockade. Loans to Ukraine must be released in the European interest, and we should all strive to ensure that the pressure on Orban, who is allied with Putin, who is an enemy to all of us, an enemy to all liberal-minded people, I believe that we must massively increase pressure in this regard. All countries bordering the Baltic Sea must make ever greater efforts, including Germany, to ensure that the shadow fleet is brought under control and that ships are stopped. The ships of the shadow fleet are moving illegally through the Baltic Sea. Every day it's estimated there are at least 3 ships sailing illegally in the Baltic. These ships are not insured, they fly false flags, they do not comply with international maritime law, they do not comply with international environmental standards, and therefore it is necessary that we, as countries bordering the Baltic Sea, must make ever greater efforts to put a stop to this. I believe that we should continue to ensure that Ukraine is able to defend itself against this criminal war of aggression. I would also hope and expect Germany to deliver on Taurus, and I would expect all parliamentarians to take another look at what their defence ministries could possibly be holding back and what they could deliver in addition to what they are already supporting Ukraine with. Only a strong Ukraine can negotiate on an equal footing with Russia and finally end this war. This war can only be ended from a position of strength, not a position of weakness, and that is why we must all work together to create that position of strength. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anton. Let me check if Ricardo Carvalho from Portugal is connected, whom we missed before.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, the war in Ukraine is not just a regional conflict, it is a direct challenge to the principles that underpin the international order, sovereignty, territorial integrity, and respect for international law. By invading Ukraine, Russia has tried to alter borders by force and undermined the foundations of European security. And Europe cannot accept that. Supporting Ukraine is not just a gesture of solidarity, it is a matter of European security. If this aggression is tolerated, the stability of our continent is at risk. This war also reminds us of a clear responsibility. Europe must strengthen its defence, deepen cooperation between member states, and strengthen its capacity to act in close liaison with NATO. Portugal supports this vision and reaffirms its commitments to the European project and NATO. Because when Ukraine defends its freedom and sovereignty, it is also defending the principles on which the European project is based: peace, law, and freedom. To uphold these principles is to defend the future of Europe. Portugal also reaffirms its solidarity and commitment to Ukraine, nor can we forget the need to speed up the European enlargement process and the necessary institutional reform. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. Can I try with Gregor Koren from Slovenia, because I see that Gregor seems to be connected. Gregor Koren? Maybe not. Let's continue with Jelena Miloš from Croatia then. Jelena Miloš from Croatia.
Thank you, dear colleagues. First of all, let me express my solidarity to the colleagues from Cyprus who are also suffering the consequence of the Iran war. I would like to, of course, reiterate the unwavering support to Ukraine in its struggle against the illegal war of aggression by Russia. It is clear that Europe stands with Ukraine. Croatia stands firmly with Ukraine. Croatia has offered, is offering, and will offer all the necessary support to Ukraine: humanitarian support, financial support, and military support. As much as you do, colleagues, we also think that supporting Ukraine is indeed a matter of European security. As a chair also of the European Affairs Committee, as are you, I think it is also our task to underline that we support the progression of Ukraine towards the European Union and that we support the speeding up of the enlargement process, including Ukraine, but also, of course, including the Western Balkans countries that have for so many years waited for EU enlargement. Finally, I would like to underline the need for the European Union to consistently respect international law in all cases. And that means in the case of Greenland, in the case of Ukraine, in the case of Gaza and in the case of Iran as well. Because without international without the respect of the international law, nobody is safe, and Europe should strongly defend it and avoid double standards. Thank you.
Thank you, Yelena. Let's continue with Sara Sofia Siren from Finland. Sara Sofia, and then follow Zoltan Teseli from Hungary. Just to be ready, Sara Sofia, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, dear colleagues. So sorry that we are not able to meet in person there in Cyprus, unfortunately, but the work continues. Among the priorities of the Cyprus presidency, and I think it's very important that Cyprus has made support for Ukraine also one of the priorities of its presidency, alongside strengthening EU's strategic autonomy in security, competitiveness, and our shared values, of course. It's vital that we do not forget Ukraine, despite everything else going on in the world. Instead, we must strengthen our support in order to achieve a just peace in Ukraine. Our support must be strong, long-term, and credible, and we stand firmly with Ukraine. It's essential that all EU member states stand firmly with Ukraine and enable strong support, provide and enable strong support to Ukraine, for example, in the European Council. We already know that it's not a question of only Ukraine's security, it's about the security of all Europe. And if Ukraine's ability to defend itself would weaken, that would send a very dangerous message that military power outweighs international law, that force rather than diplomacy determines outcomes. Russia must be stopped, and at the same time, Europe must strengthen our own security and resilience. It's our mutual interest in the whole of Europe, and I'm very happy that all of the colleagues have had the same strong message. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sara Sofia. We continue with Zoltan Teseli, followed by Peter Tali from Estonia. Zoltan Teseli from Hungary.
Warm greetings to all of you today. Today is the day after the Hungarian National Day, which is why I'm wearing a Hungarian tricolour flag pin above my heart. Yesterday, at the ceremonies in Budapest, tens of thousands of Hungarians stood up for peace. Regarding this agenda point, I propose that we jointly hold Ukraine to account for the closure of the Druzhba pipeline, which poses a serious threat to the energy stability of both Slovakia and Hungary. I would also like to hold Ukraine to account for the fact that threats were made against the life of a leader of a candidate country by the president of Ukraine, says the speaker. And perhaps we can also hold Ukraine to account for the recent attack on the Turkish pipeline, following that of the Nord Stream or Northern pipeline, says the speaker. Thank you very much for your attention today, and I would kindly ask that you please consider what I have proposed.
Thank you, Mr. Teseli. Peter Tali from Estonia, please. Followed by Edward Lewis from Malta. Yes, Peter.
Thank you, distinguished chair. Comprehensive support for Ukraine must be continued and increased. Ukraine needs the launch of the European Union 90 billion support loan, for which European Council gave political approval in last December. The process of Ukraine's accession to the European Union must also be continued as a matter of urgency. Pressure on Russia must be increased. Last week, our Riigikogu ratified the convention establishing an international claims commission to assess the damages caused by Russia's aggression against Ukraine and to determine the compensation due. I would encourage all parliaments to move forward with ratification of this convention as soon as possible. And the European Union 20th sanction package must be adopted without delay. And it's also important to continue the policy of isolating Russia. Finally, we must find a Europe-wide solution to prevent Russian combatants who have fought in the war of aggression against Ukraine from entering the European Union and the Schengen area. It's very serious. It's a matter of our security. Thank you.
Thank you, dear colleague. We continue with Edward Lewis from Malta, followed by Denis Toksansky from the Czech Chamber of Deputies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for this opportunity. 4 years on, Malta reaffirms the position that we have a strong belief that Ukraine's path towards EU membership represents one of the most enduring guarantees of its long-term security, prosperity, resilience, internal good governance, as well as stability for European citizens. There can be no peace without justice, and no justice without accountability. Only when we hold individuals, systems, regimes accountable can we truly pave the way for a just and lasting peace. That is why Malta's presidency of the Council of Europe, Malta facilitated the establishment of the Special Tribunal for the crime of aggression against Ukraine. While a secure and stable Ukraine means also a more secure and stable Europe, and while Europe is on its way to better arm itself to be able to defend our union, is of utmost importance that the constitutional requirements of individual member states, such as constitutional neutrality, are respected. The committee which I chair is receiving several legislative proposals as part of the defence package. It is crucial that the EU institutions do not take a one-size-fits-all approach and respect the realities of small and sovereign island states, EU member states like Malta. So, as my Greek colleague Dimitrios said, we need a solid European security architecture, that we need a union with one voice, with quick responsiveness, one Europe and one stand on what is happening against Ukraine and beyond. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Edward. We continue with Denis Toksansky, and then Elvira Kovac from Serbia should prepare. Denis Toksansky.
Greetings to all of you from the Czech Republic. Thank you for the floor. I will be speaking in Czech today, even though it might be easier to speak in English, but I will follow the trend of speaking one's mother tongue. Regarding Ukraine, I would like to remind you that the Czech Republic fully supports Ukraine. This is an important priority for us. At the moment, we have about 400,000 refugees from Ukraine in the Czech Republic, which is 30.64 per 1,000 Czech inhabitants. This is almost the highest number of all the countries that support Ukraine. However, I want to say that our goal is not to prolong the war in Ukraine. What is far more important is that we achieve peace, and I haven't heard enough said about that today. Peace cannot be achieved without communicating with Russia, even if we do not necessarily sympathize with Russia. What matters most to us is simply that the war and the suffering, particularly the suffering of Ukrainians, comes to an end. It makes sense to support the position of Hungary and Poland in the oil pipeline issue they are dealing with. I think that Ukraine must also recognize its commitments to us, to other countries within the EU, even more so because we are on its side, because we support Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Denis. We continue with Elvira Kovac from Serbia, followed by Pavel Bartosek from Iceland. Elvira Kovac.
Hello, I hope you can hear me. Distinguished chair, dear colleagues, the war in Ukraine represents one of the most serious challenges to European security, I think we can all agree, in recent decades even. It reminds us how important peace, stability, and respect for international law are. The Republic of Serbia firmly supports the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine in its internationally recognized borders, of course, in accordance with the UN Charter. It has voted in favor of all of key UN resolutions which acknowledge the territorial integrity of Ukraine and does not recognize any of the referendums in occupied Ukrainian territories. Serbia provides humanitarian aid to Ukraine, amounting to 93% of all the humanitarian aid coming from the Western Balkan countries. This aid includes hard-to-find equipment for Ukrainian energy systems, organizing a sports camp in Serbia for Ukrainian children, medical sanitation, vehicles, donations in essential goods, and multiple donations, both bilaterally and through the UN system. So we could all agree, and we all know, that the EU is above all a peace project. That is why it is important at this moment to continue strengthening European institutions' dialogue and cooperation. But on the other side, long-term security in Europe cannot be built solely on confrontation, but also on diplomatic efforts, confidence building, and the joint search for sustainable peace. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Elvira. We continue now with Pavel Bartosek from Iceland, followed by Marcel Spadari from Moldova. Pavel.
Thank you, Chair. 3 weeks ago, I was in Kiev with a group of European parliamentarians in the United for Ukraine group. I want to thank Speaker Stefanchuk and President Zelensky for our meaningful discussions. Also, witnessing the effects of Russia's strikes on civilian energy infrastructure firsthand provided a harsh reminder of the price Ukrainians are paying for Russian crimes. I fully support the European path chosen by the Ukrainian people. I'd also like to mention, in this regard, that the Icelandic government has signaled a national referendum for August 29th on whether to resume EU accession talks. I will vote yes and urge others to do the same, but the ultimate decision rests with the Icelandic voters, and I stress that. It is a privilege to have this choice because we know that others, like Ukrainians, are sacrificing their lives to defend it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Pavel. Marcel Spadari, followed by Claude Kern from the French Senate. Marcel Spadari now. Do we have Marcel Spadari from Moldova? Maybe Marcel is not connected. Let's see if Claude Kern, from the head of the delegation from the French Senate, is with us.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you for organising this meeting under difficult and exceptional conditions. The conflict in the Middle East must not make us forget the dramatic situation in Ukraine 4 years after the beginning of the conflict. We must continue our efforts and provide all necessary assistance to our Ukrainian neighbours. This financial support is not only exceptional war-related aid, it is also a strategic investment in the security of our continent. The Ukrainian conflict is forcing us to rethink our European security architecture and free ourselves from our dependencies on the US. As Donald Tusk rightly pointed out, it is paradoxical that 500 million Europeans are asking 300 million Americans to defend them against 140 million Russians. Let us have confidence in ourselves, let us stand in solidarity between Europeans, and finally take our own security into our own hands. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, dear colleague. We now continue with Adam Gomoda from Poland. Adam Gomoda from Poland, please. Maybe Adam is not connected. He is Jose Maria Sanchez Garcia from the Spanish Congress with us? Maybe not. I have two last speakers on my list. Let me check if they are connected. Ruari Omurku from the Irish Dale.
Yes.
I'm here. Thank you all for organizing this meeting.
Look, we all have to stand in solidarity with Ukraine. We need to stand up for international law and against that whole idea of might is right, which Russia employed when it invaded Ukraine. But we've also seen it with breaches of international law by the US and genocidal Israel. So the European Union needs to be far stronger in relation to its condemnation and standing up for this. Cyprus and Ireland both understand what it is to suffer occupation and to suffer oppression. Now, we would like to think our journey towards solving the issue of partition will be a lot easier than what's facing Ukraine and others throughout the world. We must stand solidarity. We must stand solidly with Ukraine, and hopefully there will be a point in time for facilitating a peace process, and obviously a process that will lead to freedom in all three countries. We also need to make sure that we deal with the issues of energy security and food security. Energy security made far worse in the last period, particularly by those attacks and the chaos we now have in the Middle East. And unfortunately, it has also meant greater finances for Russia. We must protect our people from the cost of living crisis that has been made worse. And we must also stand in solidarity, because we have issues like Donald Trump trying to absolutely bully the likes of Spain and Pedro Sanchez. We can't stand for this in any way, shape or form.
Thank you. Thank you, dear colleague. Let me go back to Marcel Spatari from Moldova. Let's have a go if Marcel is connected.
Well, hopefully you can hear me. The Republic of Moldova expresses its strong and unwavering support for Ukraine, for its independence, its territorial integrity, and its European safety. We are safe as long as Ukraine is fighting courageously on the battleground. The consequences of the war are directly felt in Moldova. More than 90,000 Ukrainian refugees are benefiting from temporary protection in our country, and there are thousands of Ukrainian children attending schools in Moldova. At the same time, attacks on critical infrastructure in Ukraine have cross-border effects. Following strikes on energy infrastructure upstream on the Dniester River, petroleum products have recently spilled into the river, affecting several districts in Moldova and requiring immediate response from our authorities. The European path of Ukraine and Moldova are closely connected. Progress for Ukraine strengthens stability and security across the entire region. We encourage the member states of the European Union to maintain the momentum of enlargement and to take the decisions required to open access negotiations on clusters for both Ukraine and Moldova, and to maintain the momentum. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Marcel. And lastly, let's give the floor to, let me ask if Laurent Mazauri from the French National Assembly is connected. Laurent Mazauri. Maybe not. So allow me now to go back to Ivana and to Charles, Ivana Klimpuch and Charles Gorus, for maybe 2 minutes for comments and reactions. Ivana?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, first of all, gratitude to all those colleagues who have expressed their solidarity, their support, and their understanding of what we are together standing up against. Secondly, I want to, once again, colleagues, stress this war has not been ongoing only 4 years. We are not in its 5th, but we are in the 13th year of Russian aggression against Ukraine. And I think understanding this gives us also a better way of understanding of what kind of lessons learned we still have to do. I think also language does matter. So it's not about Ukraine conflict. It is about Russian aggressive, unprovoked war against Ukraine. I think also important to underline that we should not mislead ourselves in terms of expecting that we can talk Russia into peace instead of pressuring Russia into peace. We have learned the very hard way that free cheese is the mousetrap, and therefore I think we should not be trying to see how we are seduced by potentially cheap Russian energy products. We in Europe do need common unity, political unity, strategic patience and strategic vision, fiscal resolve and courage to act in accordance with our own principles and values that are declared. And and to sum up, I would like also to underline this calls for peace that I've heard from some of the colleagues. Should be directed not on Ukraine to surrender, but actually should be targeting Russian Federation for them to stop their genocidal activity in trying to kill Ukrainian civilians and Ukrainians across the country. Should be directed to Russia in terms of calling Russia to stop destroying Ukrainian energy facilities, energy infrastructure, and also our transit capacities. In terms also should be directed to Russia to stop violating the international law. So once again, only pressuring Russia into peace can actually lead to end of this war and us going back together to secure and prosperous future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivana, and let me give the floor to Charles from the European Parliament.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am now going to speak French. For me, it's been very encouraging to see most of my colleagues converge towards the same goal, which is to side with the Ukrainians. I think it is very much to the credit of the European Parliament and the national parliaments to see that so many of you share the same understanding of the situation. In doing so, we are in tune with public opinion, or with what public opinion has been saying, not only now, but for many years. In fact, public opinion has been ahead of policy. Public opinion has been calling for an organised European defence for 10 years, and not to dismantle our partnership with the US, but to have enough critical mass to defend the entire continent itself. In doing so, we are now in tune with public opinion, as I said, and also with the conclusions that were drawn at the Conference on the Future of Europe. At that conference, a panel of young people in particular came together, young people who were extremely well informed, very erudite, and also who had the courage to express their own opinions, an opinion that was supported by 90% of the participants. But what are we actually defending? I would say to our Ukrainian colleague, naturally we are defending your territory. Everyone agrees with this. It's about defending the borders of your country. But it's also about defending our own borders. It is in fact about defending our model of society, our way of life, which is liberal democracy, that we are now called to defend. And the defence of liberal democracy is particularly important given that liberal democracy is threatened both internally and externally. It is an unfortunate fact, but the West is breaking up. Some of those who up until recently were our allies are now speaking out against us, attacking our model of freedom. But we now see a critical mass within the European Union, and I would thank all of you, or almost all of you, for being a part of that mass. But there's a critical mass of people who now want to contribute towards defending liberal democracy. At a time when everything is falling apart, liberal democracy deserves support. But it will no longer be universally supported, but only by a critical mass of people, as I said. And these people must also accept that the conclusions that we have drawn in the European Parliament in 2023, I believe it was in November, when we said that our decision-making mechanisms are no longer up to the challenge of the current situation, that they must be adapted, and we must ensure that we have a single institutional framework to address these problems. If I have emphasized the institutional aspect at the end of my speech, it is because one does not serve as Vice President of the European Parliament's Committee on Constitutional Affairs without it rubbing off on you. I do so not only as Vice Chairman of this committee, but also out of my own personal conviction. Thank you so much for your attention today.
Thank you very much, dear colleague, and let me say that coming from a country which has itself been the victim of aggression by a revisionist neighbor, we are also familiar with this strange notion that somehow it is the victim's fault for being attacked and for failing to find a reasonable compromise solution. So on this basis, I would like to express my own full solidarity and support to Ukraine. Colleagues, we conclude the first discussion of the day, and let us move immediately to the second topic, which deals with the EU and the Middle East crisis. I am pleased to invite my friend and colleague, Professor Dimitris Geridis, Vice Chair of the Committee of National Defense and Foreign Affairs of the Hellenic Parliament, to introduce the discussion. Dear colleagues, if the Commissioner for Mediterranean is able to join us, I suspect during this discussion, or maybe in the middle of our discussion, you will allow me to interrupt the sequence, give the chance to the Commissioner to address us, and then, of course, we shall resume our discussion from where we would have left it. So, with these words, Dimitris, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Yavis, dear friend Harris. Good evening from Athens and the Greek Parliament, to Nicosia, and to all the dear colleagues and friends throughout Europe. We are currently in the third week of the military campaign by US and Israeli forces against Iran, and I will try in my short intervention to sketch out where we stand, what the potential scenarios for an endgame to the conflict are, and what the implications are for the EU and the world. The past 2 weeks have demonstrated the overwhelming military superiority of the United States and Israel. However, this might not be enough to avoid a strategic blunder, as the Iranian regime fighting for survival has closed the Straits of Hormuz and threatens to keep them closed for as long as it needs in order to put pressure on the global economy. The continuous shifting of US strategic goals has made it hard to predict what comes next. It all depends on one man and one man alone, President Donald Trump, within a governmental apparatus that has been decimated of dissenting voices and professional expertise. Nevertheless, given the probability of regime change, as long as there are no ground forces involved, there are two main concluding scenarios. The first is an end to hostilities followed by an agreement between the two sides, similar to the one Obama signed in 2015 and Trump withdrew from in 2018. A freeze on Iran's nuclear and regional ambitions in exchange for the lifting of sanctions. Although this should be the most preferable outcome, it is hard to imagine Trump acceding to what he has so vehemently denounced in the past, while Israel is not interested whatsoever in any kind of negotiated deal with Tehran's Islamists. Therefore, a second scenario is more probable, according to which a ceasefire is followed by a low-intensity conflict with periodic breakouts and eruptions of hostilities, similar to those in post-1991 Iraq, In this case, a much weakened but intransigent and belligerent Iran continues to threaten the stability of the Gulf Emirates and the freedom of navigation in the Persian Gulf. The consequences for the global economy of the current Iranian crisis are already dire, but still underestimated by much of the punditry. Oil and gas prices have risen by at least 50% and will rise further still as long as hostilities continue. Even if they end in 2 or 3 weeks' time, it will take some time for many Gulf states to restart production and return the market to where it was on the eve of the war. However, Iran has demonstrated its potential to disrupt trade and close the Hormuz, a threat that it will continue to exploit to extract concessions from the Americans. If an underfunded rebel group in Yemen, like the Houthis, has been able to disrupt traffic in the Red Sea and the Suez Canal, one can only imagine the abundant potential for Iran to do the same at Hormuz and beyond. The consequences for the EU are fourfold. First, economically. As a major importer of fossil fuels, the European consumer is likely to pay a heavy price for the rise in energy prices. This is very unfortunate, as it coincides with the enhanced efforts by the EU to rid itself of its addiction to Russian energy sources at a time when much of its economy was showing signs of recovery and inflation was being tamed. Secondly, there should be no
Good. Dimitris, I think we lost your connection. Dimitri, I think you lost your sound. Let's check again Dimitris' sound, please. I think we are. Can you try again?
Are we on?
Now we are on. Now we are back.
Okay, I don't know.
No, we are not. No? No, Dimitri. Dimitri, let's. You are breaking.
Okay. Secondly, there should be no. Of the war seemed so weak at the beginning of this year. Thirdly, depending on what the end result of the current crisis is, there is a risk of renewed hybrid threats such as mass migratory flows, terrorism, and enriched uranium falling into the wrong hands. These risks will be even greater if Iran disintegrates. The final consequence is political and has to do with the EU's role as a strategic player on the world stage. Here the situation is more complicated and the conclusions mixed. On the one hand, the EU was once more ignored and kept in the dark about American intentions, despite the fact that it bears much of the collateral costs of the war in the Gulf. The United States made no effort to consult or even inform its European allies. On the other hand, many EU members are reluctant to point this out just a few months after the Greenland crisis, out of fear of further alienating the current US administration, which continues to sell advanced weaponry with European funding and to provide valuable intelligence to Ukraine. As a result, the EU appears once more divided. While all EU countries have declared their non-involvement in the war, some have facilitated the American war effort, while others, like Spain, have refused to do so. In the meantime, the vast majority of European countries have refused Donald Trump's call to contribute to a military operation to keep the Straits of Hormuz open. On the contrary, with Greece at the forefront, 6 EU member states have responded to the aerial attacks against Cyprus by sending forces in and around the island, further underlining European solidarity and the existence of a common European space that needs to be jointly defended. In the meantime, French soldiers were killed and an Italian aircraft destroyed by Iranian attacks. The EU policy-making process has often been accused of being cumbersome, bureaucratic, slow, and unlikely to result in a clear policy, as it has to reconcile the diverse views of 27 governments. However, given the risks involved in the overly personalized and excessively concentrated in the hands of one man American model, there might be some hidden advantages in the European way of doing things that can only be appreciated in juxtaposition. It seems that at some point, diplomacy will be inevitable. And this might be when the European contribution becomes essential if stability is to be restored. By virtue of their historical experience, Europeans can more easily take the long view and understand the need for a political framework if the Middle Eastern predicament is to be relieved. Military violence is not useless, but it's not a panacea as long as it is not complemented by a broader strategic vision. Europe's role is to remind everyone of this truism and to work as close as possible with its American partner to make it happen. The current Iranian crisis, which some have named the third Gulf War, should remind everybody in Europe of the urgency of building up Europe's strategic autonomy, accelerating the energy transition away from importing fossil fuels from unreliable sources, and strengthening EU structures and procedures so that Europe can better withstand hybrid threats. This
Dimitris, let's try again your sound. Not yet. I don't think we have sound from Dimitris Garidis.
Okay.
Now we do. Let's continue.
This is my concluding phrase, and I need to have a crescendo. So, this
we don't have. We are losing out on your crescendo, Dimitris. So let's. Everything seems to be okay from our side. Can you try again from your side? I'm afraid we don't have Dimitris. Okay, I will propose we open the floor, and in any case we shall give you the chance to come back, Dimitris, so we shall combine your crescendo with your conclusion. I'm sure you can make it, but thank you for your intervention, and thank you for bringing your academic background into this political intervention. Let me now give the floor to Barry Ward from is it Barry or is it? Okay, it's Rory Omarchu from Ireland going first.
All right, Guramaigov, just to clear up something from before, when I spoke about facilitating a peace process as regards like Russia's absolutely illegal invasion of Ukraine, it is the idea that I accept you need partners for peace. Vladimir Putin is not one at this point in time. And I stand absolutely in solidarity with the Ukrainian people. Look, I've already mentioned that we're dealing with this chaos in the Middle East caused by what are the illegal actions by Israel and by the United States, which has obviously given full backing at this point in time. And what we need to see is real European solidarity. We need to make sure that we stand absolutely on the side of international law and an acceptance that if we don't know what exactly we will be dealing with in the outworkings of this, but we know that American foreign policy has never been good in the Middle East, has always been detrimental to its own strategic interests. This is no different. But in Donald Trump, you have someone that believes he does not need partners in any way, shape, or form. What we are also seeing is Israel using this opportunity not only to attack Lebanon, but also to continue its genocidal attacks in Gaza. And we need to stand absolutely firm against all of this. And as I say, against might is right, which is doing huge harm across the world. Guramaigov.
Thank you. To be sure, is Barry Ward also interested to take the floor from the Irish Parliament?
Yes, I will, if I may, Chair.
Yes, actually, you're the head of the delegation. I had you first on the list. I wasn't sure if it was, if you still wanted. So go ahead, Barry.
I will speak in Irish, if I may. The Irish public are strongly in favour of EU membership. The percentage of those who support membership of the EU has always been over 85%. The Irish people recognise the fundamental benefits of EU membership, particularly the rule of law. It seems to me that the European Commission's response to the ongoing events in the Middle East, however, has been incoherent and inconsistent. Moreover, the European approach has failed to recognise violations of international law. I am concerned that this mistaken perception will damage the relationship between the EU and the people of Ireland. I fear that the Irish people will no longer view the EU as they should, as the international standard bearer for opposing violations to international law, and that we Europeans will have no credibility on this issue until that changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Let us continue with Christian Vigenin from the European Parliament, please. Christian Vigenin from the European Parliament. Let us then continue with Pierre-Alexandre Anglade from the French National Assembly.
Yes, do you hear me, Mr. President?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you very much, dear colleagues. What is happening today in the Middle East is obviously extremely serious. Each strike, each retaliation, each new tension brings the region a little closer to a generalized flare-up. And in a space that has already been made extremely fragile by years of conflict, the risk of escalation is obviously real. Escalation that is very difficult to control. Also, in this context, I believe that the role of the Europeans is obviously to try to bring back diplomacy, discussion, and to make sure that peace can return. In this crisis, I believe we need to pursue a few clear priorities. Firstly, of course, we must protect the civilian population to avoid any uncontrolled escalation and to try to return it to a diplomatic solution. This is what France is continuing to do through the position that has been expressed by the President of the Republic several times, with priorities that are extremely clear. First and foremost, the protection of citizens. Secondly, then, the protection of our partners in the region is important, those with whom we have defence agreements. I'm thinking of Qatar, Kuwait, the UAE, Bahrain, but also Jordan, Iraq, and of course Cyprus. And I welcome the mobilization of several European countries to come to support of Cyprus. And finally, we must guarantee freedom of movement in the Strait of Hormuz. As such, I would just like to say that I'm very surprised by what the American president has proposed, who, after having triggered this offensive without consulting or asking for our opinions, comes today to ask for our support in what increasingly looks like a dead end. I would also like to conclude by saying a word about Lebanon. Hezbollah has committed an extremely serious mistake in attacking Israel, but the invasion of Lebanon, causing hundreds of thousands of displacements and hundreds of deaths, is unacceptable. The fight against Hezbollah involves the strengthening of the Lebanese state, certainly not the destruction and occupation of an entire region of Lebanon. Thank you.
Thank you, Pierre-Alexandre. I will now give the floor to Marina Nicolaou from the Cyprus Parliament. Marina Nicolaou, please.
Shall we try again, please?
Okay, let's. I see that Christian Vigenin is connected. Let's continue with Christian, please.
Yeah, if we can try again, can you hear me? Because I had a problem.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
You have the floor. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Dear colleagues, allow me to wish every success to the Cyprus presidency of the Council. You have the solidarity and support of the European Parliament. The crisis in the Middle East illustrates once again the growing fragility of the international order. We are witnessing a dangerous escalation whose strategic objective remains unclear, yet whose consequences could be felt far beyond the region. There is little doubt that the Iranian regime contributes to instability in the region and bears responsibility for repression against its own citizens. But history has repeatedly shown that military escalation rarely produces stability or democratic change. Iraq, Afghanistan, and Libya are sobering reminders of this. If violations of international law are met with further violations, the result is not security but a cycle of instability. Even more worrying, it risks sending a global signal that security today depends not on diplomacy and international rules, but on military deterrence and the accumulation of weapons. Europe therefore needs a clear and independent voice, one that consistently defends international law, diplomacy and de-escalation. And finally, we must also ensure that Europe is not automatically drawn into conflicts whose strategic decisions are taken elsewhere, while the consequences are ultimately borne by European citizens. Thank you.
Giulio Maria Terzi from Italian Senate.
Thank you, Chair. Iran is on our agenda today due to the conflicts that it has provoked over the decades in the Middle East and for its ongoing alliance with Russia. We find ourselves in the middle of conflicts that affect Europe, Cyprus, the Gulf countries and the Mediterranean, with repercussions on energy markets and other essential raw materials. The EU must act decisively and in a cohesive manner with international and regional partners to find political solutions to the crisis. We need to be clear in condemning the atrocious repression by the Iranian Ayatollahs and their violations of human rights. For this reason, I reiterate the need for measures against the Parstaran Corps, a highly dangerous terrorist organization. Another priority is the adoption of measures to mitigate the economic impact of the crisis and to avoid speculation on the energy and food markets. We must ensure the security of all borders within the European Union. I would like to reiterate our full support for our Cypriot friends. The deployment of the frigate Martinengo is a testimony to this support and a concrete sign of European solidarity with Nicosia. Finally, with regard to Iran, I would again condemn their propaganda and call for a strong political reaction to the anti-Semitic hate propaganda that Iran is spreading. We cannot ignore this very serious phenomenon that is also growing stronger throughout Europe. Combating anti-Semitism must be a priority for the European Union and all its member states. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Terzi, for your words, but also for the Italian support to Cyprus. Let me try to connect with Marina Nicolaou from our own parliament. Yes.
Mr. Chair, dear colleagues, I will speak in Greek.
Dear colleagues, the escalation of the conflict in the Middle East following the attack by the USA and Israel against Iran, as well as Iran's attacks on countries in the Persian Gulf, pose serious risks to all the peoples of the region, including Cyprus, my homeland. Israel, an occupying state responsible for genocidal operations in Gaza, is expanding its military threat, thus lighting the fuse for the entire region. The only sustainable way out of the crisis is an immediate cessation of hostilities, a return to diplomacy, and strict adherence to international law. The defence of international law and the principles underpinning it cannot be à la carte. The rules-based international order, established after the Second World War, is the foundation of international governance and should be universally respected. If the EU accepts contempt for the rules-based order, that will also undermine our own cause. I remind you that my country has been under Turkish military occupation since 1974. As we call on the international community to condemn Turkey's violations of international law and continuing occupation, we cannot remain silent when international law is violated elsewhere. Trump and Netanyahu are not acting as a result of Iran's violations of human rights or its nuclear capabilities. Besides, the IAEA has not confirmed Iran's nuclear capabilities, and the Israeli Prime Minister himself said that he had destroyed them during the 12-day war in June 2025. Israel is the only state in the region that possesses an illegal nuclear arsenal, and it is not a party to the relevant treaties. Such pretexts for war are not very convincing, especially when we recall Iraq's alleged weapons of mass destruction, which of course were never found. Behind their statements lie geopolitical interests, the desire to control energy resources and energy corridors, and the retention of global hegemony. But even if some choose to ignore reality, a crucial question remains. How has the European Union abandoned its proclaimed principles underpinned by international humanitarian law? The EU continues to maintain its ties with Israel, whereas in other cases it has broken ties with other countries. The EU faces serious scrutiny over its double standards. At this critical juncture, colleagues, the European Union cannot be reduced to a mere spectator, nor can we further militarize. The European Union must actively pursue an independent role focused on peace, de-escalation, and international law. For Cyprus, the priorities are clear. There could be no direct involvement in the war, no use of its territory for military operations, and the same goes for the British bases in Cyprus, which are a problematic legacy of colonialism. The peace and stability of the region now depend on consistent adherence to international law and active diplomacy. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Marina. As host, I suppose we have a privilege of an extra minute, so thank you for your intervention. Let's continue with Jantien Zwinkels from the Netherlands. Is Jantien Zwinkels connected?
I am.
You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. The Netherlands, too, is concerned about developments in the Middle East, and in particular in Iran. Last week, our House of Representatives therefore held a debate with the Prime Minister, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and the Minister of Defense on the situation of Iran. And as one of our Member of Parliament aptly put it, the people of Iran deserve freedom. Everyone agrees on that. But the views in the House differ widely on how this should be achieved. Last week, the House of Representatives also approved the deployment of a frigate to Cyprus to help defend European territory, sailing alongside a French aircraft carrier. In the debate, the Minister of Foreign Affairs stated that the Dutch government is exploring various ways to support civil society and human rights organizations in Iran, in cooperation with our European partners and other partners. He also pointed out that together with our European partners and others worldwide, we can take a strong stance based on our values relating to rule of law, democracy, human rights, and freedom, and produce our dependencies. However, we need to find new ways to protect those values globally in an international order that is under pressure and is undergoing lasting change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jantine. And of course, once again, thank you for the Dutch naval support in the Cyprus waters. Let's continue with Gregor Koren from Slovenia. Gregor Koren, Slovenia, please. I don't think we can hear Gregor, even though I see he's trying to connect. Let's move on to Peter Tali from Estonia. No, Peter is not connected. Okay, let's move on to Jacek Vlosowicz, if I said the name correctly, from the Polish Senate.
Hello, can you hear me? Yes. Okay, thank you, Chair. Mr. Chair, colleagues, the European Union has consistently stressed that further escalation of the conflict in the Middle East is extremely dangerous, and it could lead to destabilization with global consequences. Therefore, our immediate priority should be, firstly, ending the fighting, secondly, the protection of the civilian population in the Middle East, and thirdly, the return of all parties to negotiations and diplomatic dialogue. Poland shares these objectives and unequivocally condemns all actions leading to the proliferation of the conflict. We are consistently in favour of a diplomatic solution to disputes, including Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile programs. We also support all efforts to maintain dialogue and any mediation initiatives in the region as well. At the same time, we stress that the stability of the Middle East is of direct importance to Europe's own security, including free shipping, economic stability, and security of citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you, dear colleague. Let's continue with Vicente Montalves Aguilam from Spain.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, an old temptation has reared its head in the Middle East. When politics fails, some present war as a solution, and Spain does not agree with this. The Spanish government has made this very clear. No to war, yes to international law. Because we already know where that path leads. It begins with speeches about security and ends with entire regions devastated, generations doomed to live among rubble. Today we see it in Gaza, where civilian suffering is weighing on the world's conscience. And we see it in the dangerous escalation in Iran, which threatens to set the entire region alight, if it hasn't already. Something must be said very clearly. No one has ever been liberated with missiles. Women are not liberated by bombing little girls. Europe was born precisely to prove that force without rules does not bring order, it brings tragedy. That is why the voice of Europe must be that of international law, diplomacy, and restraint. Because when the world nears the abyss, real political responsibility is not pushing forward or looking the other way, it's pulling the handbrake. Thank you very much.
Thank you, dear colleague. Let me give the floor to Radvile Mikule Niene from Lithuania.
unfortunate that we can't be together in one room today, but best regards from Lithuania to your beautiful country. When growing up, I thought that my generation will only commemorate anniversaries of brutal wars and conflicts, yet we all live in war. Even the countries that are not on the front line, we are all affected. Crazy dictators attack, harass, bully the normal world, which for decades managed to live by following commonly agreed rules. Russia's way of life to spread chaos, to attack its neighbors, regimes of Iran support crazy regimes and organizations that terrorize innocent people around the world. Iran supports Russia, Russia supports Iran. Our responsibility is to stick together in these crazy times, to support Ukraine and to say thank you for Ukraine, not only for defending all of us, but also sharing crucial expertise on drone defense in this new war. Iran's regime ignored international community's efforts to resolve issues, nuclear and etc., through dialogue. There has been a pattern of behavior that has led into the current situation. Iran poses a threat not only to the Middle East, but to international stability. Blockade of Hormuz is entirely unacceptable. Lithuania strongly supports the European Commission's position that the EU must not return to support Russian energy, and in that case, its machine of war. For upcoming MFF, we have to take into consideration reality that we are living in, threats from crazy regimes. Thank you very much, and we are waiting for you next year in Lithuania. Thank you.
Thank you, dear colleague. Thank you very much. Let's try to continue with Elena Miloš from Croatia, please.
So, dear colleagues, first let me clearly say that the attack on Iran started by Israel and the US as an attack on sovereign country is completely illegal. It has been done without the UN mandate and is totally and completely against the international law. The attacks on Iran and the neighboring countries is also completely legal and against the international law. I offer my solidarity to Cyprus and to Gulf countries that are suffering the consequences of this war. Indeed, as many of you have said, and I say it as well, the Iranian people deserve freedom from repression and from the Iranian regime. But I will never, ever be convinced by those that say that bombing the Iranian schools, hospitals, and killing children by tomahawks is going to help the Iranian people. It will not. I will reiterate my firm belief that Europe must consistently condemn all violations of international law in the case of Ukraine, in the case of Greenland, in the case of Gaza, and Iran as well. International law keeps us safe. The lack of it makes Europe even more vulnerable. I am extremely concerned by the fact that not one European leader, except for the Spanish Prime Minister, was willing to stand in defense of the international law and has in that way legitimized the illegal war. By acting in this way, I believe the European leaders are not working in the interest of European citizens because the cost of this war is being paid exactly by the European citizens with higher energy prices and I fear with possible consequences that we have already seen after the Iraq war. Therefore, I call for de-escalation, I call for diplomacy. Europe did not start this war, it should not participate in this war, and it should not support it in any way illegal wars. Thank you.
Thank you, colleague. Let us continue with Ilona Valtau from Sweden.
Thank you for giving me the floor. For security in the Mediterranean, we need to end the war that is ongoing in the region. But I'm not going to talk about Iran now, even if the attacks are now violating international law. Rather, I'm going to talk about a long conflict that has now faded into the background somewhat. The Israeli state's war on Gaza has gone on for far too long without the EU taking action. The EU must act now to stop the violence in the West Bank and in Gaza and move forward with suspending Israel from Horizon Europe. We must freeze the association agreement until Palestinians are safe. I would also like to mention migration. Refugees must have the right to seek asylum in Europe and not be subjected to violence in our partner countries such as Libya or at the external border of the Union. The EU must take steps to ensure the rights and security of refugees are being upheld. The Migration Pact and the cooperation with Libya and other countries makes it unnecessarily dangerous for refugees to flee. We should, as the EU, be able to agree on a better and more humane migration policy going forward. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, colleague. Let us now continue with Edith Estrela from Portugal, if she's connected. Is Edith Estrela from Portugal on the line? Let me then try Dennis.
Mr. Chair, the European Union must condemn the military aggression of the United States and Israel against Iran, as it rightly condemned Russia's invasion of Ukraine. There can be no double standards. The fact that the Iranian regime is repressive and totalitarian does not justify the violation of international law. And we must firmly condemn the bombing of civilian targets, including that of a school that killed more than 100 children. The economic and social consequences of this war are already being felt all over the world. We're making a lot of money from oil, said Donald Trump. Trump and Putin may be winning, but the interests of our citizens are being undermined. Rising fuel prices have already pushed up the cost of essential goods. Disrupted transport and tourism. This requires a strong European response, guided by the common interest. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Denis Doksanski from the Czech Chamber is next.
Thank you again. Good afternoon, everyone. I wish to comment on the situation in Iran on behalf of the Czech Republic. We, contrary to others here, support and totally understand the actions of both the USA and Israel. Iran and its Islamic totalitarian regime are a grave danger to its neighbours, especially given their pursuit of nuclear weapons. And I agree that this pursuit needed to be curtailed. I am sorry to hear so many negative statements about Israel. Sometimes it seems as if espousing European values equates to being anti-Israel. I want to remind you again that this is the only democracy in the Middle East, that there is certainly no genocide in Gaza or anywhere else. We quite often forget to talk about the terrorist acts of Hamas and Hezbollah, who use the civilian populations as human shields, resulting in a huge number of civilian victims. And I also want to resolutely reject all calls to end cooperation with Israel. On the contrary, we need to increase cooperation. It is the only way to bring peace to the region in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, colleague. Next is Života Stracevic from Serbia.
Honor representatives, if there is no consistency in politics, if international law is treated as suggestion rather than a mandate, then we inevitably face what is called epic rage. This destabilization did not happen overnight. It began with ironically named Merciful Angel in 1999 against a small Serbia. Today, we see that the path from Merciful Angel to epic rage is terrifyingly short. American intelligence officer Stephen O'Hearn documented how elite Iranian units trained and armed forces in Bosnia and Kosovo. Despite beheadings and atrocious crimes committed then, they were supported. Now, because of those same forces and their ballistic missiles, we are forced to meet via internet connections rather than in a plenary session. Our past inconsistencies have become our present threats. The consequences are clear. an increasing number of war zone, latent energy and economic crisis, migrant crisis, and stagnation of European living standards. The EU must return to its roots and basic principles. We need peace more than ever. It's time for EU to lead once again, not in conflict, but in economic, cultural, and democratic development. Serbia is firmly staying on the international law principles and support diplomacy. Thank you.
Thank you, colleague. Let me give the floor to Elena Vintoniak from Ukraine, if she is connected. Olena Vintoniak.
Dear colleagues, can you hear me?
Yes, dear colleague.
Dear colleagues, the crisis in the Middle East once again demonstrates how fragile international security remains and how closely conflicts across regions are interconnected. Ukraine consistently advocates strict compliance with international law and the UN Charter. At the same time, we must clearly recognize the sources of instability. The regime in Tehran plays a significant role in fueling tension in the Middle East. Moreover, it is not only a regional actor. It is also a direct ally in Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. Iran has transferred thousands of Shahed drones, their production technologies and other weapons to Russia. During the full-scale invasion, the Russian Federation has launched more than 57,000 strike drones against Ukrainian cities and civilian infrastructure. This cooperation between Moscow and Tehran represents a strategic alliance of authoritarian regimes that directly threatens European security. In this context, preserving the unity of Europe and prevention divisions within the transatlantic community is critically important. We believe it is necessary to deter Iran through legal instruments, effective sanctions, and diplomacy, while minimizing the risk of a large-scale regional war. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, dear colleague. Now the floor to Peter Tali from Estonia.
Thank you, distinguished chair. Let me be frank. The Iranian regime is one of the key players in a new authoritarian axis of evils that challenges the entire free world. The Iranian regime's nuclear and ballistic missile programs, its support for terrorist groups, its assistance to Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, and its violent behavior toward its own people pose a threat to entire global security, not only to regional security. Estonia supports steps to eliminate those threats and supports the freedom of the Iranian people to decide their own future. And Estonia considers it's critically important that the international community, including the European Union, achieves a stability in the Middle East as quickly as it possible. And Estonia supports measures to protect the region airspace, sea routes, and freedom of navigation, including the Strait of Hormuz, as well as in international waters in Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden as well. And Estonia strongly condemns Iran's attacks against countries in the region. Thank you.
Thank you, colleague. Ronan Legleux from the French Senate, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, I would like to express my support for the Republic of Cyprus, who are on the front line of the European Union and facing up to the crisis that we are experiencing in the Middle East firsthand. A crisis that is the result of actions by Iran and its proxies, including Hezbollah in Lebanon. The recent visit of the President of the French Republic, Emmanuel Macron, highlighted the close ties and partnership that exists between France and Cyprus, something I wholly welcome. I am very pleased to see that France is sending an imposing group of aircraft to the Mediterranean Sea as soon as possible, as well as 2 French frigates, which will reinforce the Aspides operation to ensure freedom of movement and security in this strategic area for the European Union. There are also currently 5 CSDP missions mobilised in the area, as well as providing important financial and humanitarian support. This is a strategic zone. Naturally, I'm thinking of trade flows and energy issues, but I'm also thinking above all of the situation of the civilian population in the conflict zones and the security of our fellow European citizens who are present in countries subject to attacks by Iran and its proxies. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you once again for the French support, because we know that reference to international legality alone is not always enough to guarantee the safety and freedom of our country. So thank you for being militarily present in the Eastern Mediterranean. Colleagues, at this point, let us try to connect with the EU Commissioner for Mediterranean, with Commissioner Suica. Is the Commissioner online? Let us make sure that, let us check.
Good afternoon. The Commissioner is here.
Excellent, excellent. Dubravka Suica is the first commissioner to hold the portfolio, the special portfolio for the Mediterranean. She has previously served as vice president of the previous European Commission. And we are delighted as we are engaged in this discussion, we are delighted to have her with us. I give the floor to the Commissioner.
Thank you so much, dear Mr. Georgiades, dear colleagues. Thank you for this opportunity to address you all. You know that I have been member of the European Parliament and also member of Croatian National Parliament, so I know the role of parliamentarians. So I appreciate the value of dialogue, bringing all of us together to discuss how we can further align our interests within and outside the European Union. And this is democracy in action. This COSAC event is especially timely. Today, we see the importance of partnerships to be able to withstand shocks and instability in our neighborhood. The war in Iran is a case in point. De-escalation and diplomacy remains our focus. I said today 3D, de-escalation, diplomacy and dialogue. President von der Leyen is crystal clear on this. I want to reiterate that the European Commission continues to support the Iranian people to reach their aspiration for a better life, freedom and dignity. So it's in their hands to decide on their future, and we can only assist. Just as we stand with our partners in the region, our support to them is and will remain unwavering. The members of the Gulf Cooperation Council have conveyed to us their appreciation of our support. But of course, we are seeing the cost of escalation in real time, one of them being that we could not meet in person today, which is a pity. More importantly, the cost for energy markets, for maritime security, and of course, the human cost above all. Instability around Europe has a direct impact on Europe. There is no way around this. Now is the time to strengthen partnerships, to stick together across the European Union and across the region. Already in 2024, President von der Leyen chose to put the Mediterranean at the forefront of our political agenda. And I'm proud, as you already said, that I'm the first commissioner in charge of Mediterranean, but I'm proud that we have launched the Pact for the Mediterranean last November. And the Pact is a launchpad for a new relationship. You know that we already had some documents, agenda for the Mediterranean, some other documents earlier. But this time, this pact means not only document, but it is a real pact. So we want to reinforce our partnerships. We want to look to develop shared interests and to deliver concretely for Europeans and for all our Mediterranean partners. For example, we are developing and funding projects like TMED, developing renewables in the southern Mediterranean, because we understand the massive return on this investment. This will impact European households who can consume cheaper energy. It will impact European business who become more competitive, and that ultimately it will impact our European independence from energy shocks like the ones we are going through exactly now. And this is but one example. I could talk to you about strengthening cooperation to act more effectively on security, on migration by fighting smuggling, paving the way for legal pathways. Every action in the pact is concrete, from cooperation on firefighting to university cooperation. We are investing where the return is greatest, which is why youth is so central. It's not only about business and economy and money, but it's about people. For example, through the pact, we are setting up a Mediterranean university to expand opportunities for young people. This will boost learner mobility in the region and help us respond better to the needs and gaps of our labor market. And we are setting up a youth parliamentary assembly with the representatives across the Mediterranean. We want to provide a forum for young elected representatives in the region because young voices are an investment in the future. All of this adds real value to the lives of people in the European Union and in our partner countries. That remains my first priority, and this is the first pillar of this pact, which means investing in people. You will see the action plan we will present soon, a document that will continue growing with each update, with each new initiative, because that is the nature of partnerships. If you foster them, they keep on giving. Our strategic comprehensive partnerships with Egypt, Tunisia, and Jordan are good examples. They are ambitious, they target common interests, and they aim at creating shared prosperity for all the people in the region. I want the political momentum of the pact to help us align our significant financial and technical assistance with the priorities and benchmarks we have agreed together. Just as I want Europe to meet this moment, a moment where stability and cooperation are in high demand, strengthening our strategic engagement with our partners in the Gulf. I am a commissioner for Mediterranean, but also for the Gulf countries. Gulf is also part of this region. And without them, it would be not easy to imagine the security and prosperity and future of the region itself. We have the mandate from the member states following the extraordinary meeting of the foreign minister of the European Union and GCC, which took place on the 5th of March. And from our European leadership, following the call by President von der Leyen and President Costa with regional partners on the 9th of March. Now is the time to press on, to work on bilateral strategic partnership agreements with our Gulf partners. After all, strong EU-GCC partnership will be key to our energy diversification strategy. It will be key to de-risking our economy and to ensure the security and stability in the region. But we cannot advance these goals without the necessary resources. And so I would ask you all here today, whether in the European Parliament or in your parliaments back home, to be advocates for us to continue our work in the next 7 years, which means the next multi-annual financial framework, the MFF, will prove decisive. And I count on all your support to our work to continue, because our futures are fundamentally interconnected by history, by geography, by shared interest, but also by our unwavering will to build something together. So thank you so much for listening to me, and let's be in touch, and I will try to continue listening to different interventions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner. And indeed, as you have said, the Mediterranean and the extended region will either be a region of crises and challenges, or it will be a region of opportunities. And this depends to a very large extent on how our own engagement with the region will shape up, how effective and targeted it is. And that's why I think that your own role is actually crucial. Since you do have some minutes to be with us, let me give the floor to Dimitris Geridis from the Greek Parliament, who was the introducer of our previous session on the Middle East crisis, because I do believe that the crisis and our plan for the Mediterranean cannot actually be separated. So I will ask Dimitris Geridis to be the first one to comment, and maybe attempting to make the link between the Middle East and the Mediterranean. Dimitris Geridis. Do we have Dimitris Geridis? If not, or until we manage to connect with the Hellenic Parliament, let me give the floor to Barry Ward from the Irish Parliament, which is the incoming presidency. Barry Ward.
Sorry, Chair, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. I was just slightly disconnected there for a moment, but I wanted to acknowledge the importance of this issue. And I think we can sometimes be far away in Ireland from the pressures that are put on other countries, but it's something that we are acutely aware of, and something that is very important to us also. I think there are probably other countries that have more to say about this than Ireland does, but I wanted to reassure members that these are issues that are important to us, and they are not issues from which we will shy during our time in your chair, when the presidency comes to Dublin. They are also issues that we will discuss here. And further to what I said earlier, I'm conscious that there may be issues, because we won't have conclusions today, that will hang over. And I'm very happy to discuss those issues with you and with colleagues with a view to furthering them during the Irish presidency. Thank you.
Excellent, dear colleague. Good to hear that. Let me try now to give the floor to Christian Vigenin from the European Parliament, and then I shall try again to give the floor to Dimitris Geridis.
Thank you, Chair, Madam Commissioner. The Mediterranean has always been more than a sea. It is a shared space of history, culture, trade, and human connection. Today, it is also a space where our common challenges are most visible, from climate change and migration to economic inequality and regional instability. For the European Union, strengthening the Euro-Mediterranean partnership is therefore not only a matter of neighborhood policy, it is a strategic investment in our shared future. Deepening cooperation in sustainable economic development, climate resilience, and connectivity across the region will be essential. In this context, regional cooperation within the EU also plays an important role. The partnership between Bulgaria and Greece, for example, through improved transport corridors and growing energy interconnectivity between our two countries, we are strengthening not only bilateral ties, but also the wider connectivity between Southeast Europe and the Mediterranean region. National parliaments, together with the European Parliament, have a crucial role to play. Through parliamentary diplomacy and legislative cooperation, we can ensure that our partnerships translate into concrete results for citizens on both shores of the Mediterranean. Through cooperation with our Mediterranean neighbors, the sea becomes not a distant border, but a gateway, connecting our economies, our infrastructure, and our shared European future. Commissioner Šuica, I have a question to you. Are there any concrete initiatives planned to promote deeper economic, transport and energy connectivity between Southeast Europe and the Mediterranean region? How the new multi-annual financial framework reflects these needs? Thank you so much.
Thank you, colleague. Let me try again to connect with Dimitris Keridis. I think the connection with Athens is failing us, strangely enough. Then let me try to give the floor to Claude Kern from the French Senate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Commissioner, the Pact for the Mediterranean marks a change of approach on the part of the European Union vis-à-vis its partners in the southern shore of the Mediterranean. We welcome this. However, we remain attentive with regard to the implementation of the approach, as the Senate's European Affairs Committee expressed last November. Many member states, including France, are concerned about the method of implementing the Pact's action plan. We are calling for the guidance function of the Council and the role of the member states to be respected in this regard. Can you assure us of this, Madam Commissioner? Furthermore, while the Trans-Mediterranean Initiative on Renewable Energy and Clean Technologies, also known as TMED, is due to be presented at the end of April, France has reiterated the imperative of respecting the principle of technological neutrality. Could you also confirm this for us, Madam Commissioner? Lastly, the relationship between the financing of this pact and the Global Gateway Strategy does not always appear entirely clear to us. I would kindly ask that you also shed some light on this matter, Madam Commissioner. Thank you very much.
Thank you, dear colleague. I see Dimitris Keridis already connected, so let's see if you can actually manage to hear you.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Walking through my cell phone.
Not a bad idea, yes.
Okay, technology is always difficult, but now, cell phone technology is better than all the systems here in the parliament. Anyway, I think we can all agree that we had a very interesting and a fruitful discussion with various views on what is going on in the Middle East. We can all agree that the Iranian regime is reprehensible and despicable, and we can all agree to wish that the Iranian people is free and becomes free. However, history should not be ignored. I think we had similar efforts in the past to topple reprehensible regimes, like in Iraq in 2003, and more recently in Libya and elsewhere, and the results were not good, not for the people, not for the region, not for global security. So we should be aware of history's lessons. Point number two, I think there is no doubt that what we are talking about today in the Middle East is outside international law. Not only that, but there was not an effort by the US administration, similar to the one in 2003 in the Security Council, to seek the support of the international community or to get the support like in 1991. There was the decapitation of leadership and the bombardment while negotiations were ongoing in Geneva. And this sets a precedent. I heard our colleagues from the Baltics and elsewhere talking about how bad Iran is and how big of an ally to Putin, but I don't see Putin particularly sad about the development, and I see him happy to get the spotlight away from Ukraine. I see him happy to see all these American interceptors being consumed in an unprecedented pace in the Gulf instead of being sent to Ukraine for the defense of Ukraine. And I see him happy that the Russian barrel of oil that he used to sell for 40 euros, $45 to China at a discount rate is now selling for 110, more than double, because it's the best replacement for crude from the Gulf. They are similar qualities. So I want to believe that something good might come out of this, but judging from Gaza, 2.5 years later, after bombardment, after the death of thousands, I see Hamas still in control of half of Gaza. I am reluctant to be as optimistic. And I will conclude with a phrase I didn't mention before, that despite the problems, the deficits and the criticisms, sometimes exaggerated against Europe, I strongly believe that we cannot and will not fail in the endeavor, in our joint endeavor for strategic autonomy, for accelerating energy transition, for strengthening EU structures to meet hybrid threats, as it is increasingly being realized that we are faced with an existential threat in a less and less stable world. And I think this is the message of today's events, that we cannot fail, and the only way ahead is success by working closely together. Thank you very much, and all the best to the Cypriot presidency. I hope next time we can all meet and enjoy the famous Cypriot hospitality in Nicosia or Lemesol or the other beautiful cities of Cyprus. Thank you.
Dimitris, thank you, Dimitris. Colleagues, we shall not be able to give the chance to everyone who wants to speak to do so. Let me try to ask for 1 minute interventions from maybe another 2 or 3 colleagues. That's the most we have. Another 2 or 3 very brief interventions, and let me see if Bastian van Apeldoorn from the Netherlands is connected. Bastian van Apeldoorn. Yes,
thank you, Chair. I think we're all deeply concerned about the spiraling consequences of the escalating illegal American-Israeli war and the retaliation by the abhorrently repressive Iranian regime against targets that aren't party to this conflict, which is likewise a gross violation of international law. And this war has not only wreaked havoc across the region, but it's also fueling a global energy crisis, the cost of which European citizens are already beginning to bear. It has also threatened European security, particularly in the Eastern Mediterranean, which is why we are unfortunately convening online instead of on Cyprus. And allow me to express, Chair, on behalf of the Dutch Senate, our solidarity with the people of Cyprus. I think the key question before us is how Europe can contribute to ending this war, enabling a return to diplomacy, and mitigating the negative consequences for European security and for our economy and for our societies. It is essential that Europe stands united in defending the human rights of Iranians who continue to suffer brutal repression, and united in defending the international legal order and the principles of the UN Charter. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, dear colleague. Paula Butterley from Ireland. A very quick intervention, please. Paula Butterley from Ireland. Last chance for Paula to speak. Okay, I will have to give the floor to the Commissioner to maybe respond to some of the comments that were made, and essentially to conclude this session. We are already running late. So, Commissioner, you have the floor for some concluding remarks.
Thank you, dear Chair. I was listening carefully to the remarks, and I will try to reply to some questions. It was not a coincidence that I mentioned the action plan, because everybody asked about the concrete and tangible results of the pact. I already said that we want to have this pact not as a document, but as a real pact with the people of southern neighborhood, plus, of course, Gulf countries. So action plan is tangible with tangible concrete projects. And one of the projects is, because someone asked for the concrete project, is Trans-Mediterranean Renewable Energy Clean Tech Initiative, which means investing in renewables on the southern shores of the Mediterranean. Of course, and a connection to MFF. For the next MFF, the Commission's proposal is or was to double our budget. For example, at the moment it was 21 billion euro For the next 7 years period, it's proposed to be 42 billion euros. So you see, since it's doubled, you see that our inclination and our towards the southern Mediterranean is clear. But of course, in order to endorse this multi-annual financial framework, we need support from member states, which means from the Council, and from the Parliament, which is even much more important. So we need your support for this in order to have this money. But this money won't be enough. So we need private investments, private investors. So this money we have, which is not only for this 42 billion, but for many other projects, we can multiply each euro by 5, by 6, or by 7. So that means that together with contributions from other partners, from banks, from different financial institutions, we can come to 7.4 billion, which is expected to be mobilized. Of course, we will follow what's going on by establishing a TMED investment platform. So we will know what's going on within this region, and the Commission will follow via this platform. This is on renewable energy. Of course, someone said that he is concerned, I forgot the name, sorry, concerned about the implementation. It's exactly the opposite. We don't want, as I said, not only document, this is living document, this is concrete, tangible pact, and we will have concrete and tangible projects. This is the reason why on the 21st of April, when there will be informal leaders meeting in Cyprus, they will be the ones who will discuss this action plan. It will not be formally adopted, but it will be discussed among leaders of 27, which gives this additional weight to this action plan. Global Gateway is also very good tools which we use for our investments in North Africa and worldwide. These were the questions, I think. I only want to tell you that this action plan and this Pact for the Mediterranean will be governed by Foreign Affairs Councils, which means Foreign Affairs Councils will discuss the implementation twice a year, 2 times a year, and also before them, senior officials will also discuss this plan. So we will not put it in drawer, we will discuss it, we will see what are the results and where we are every 6 months, every semester, which I think is good. So which means that each presidency, be it Irish or Cypriot or new presidencies, they will have the chance to discuss the deliverables of this plan. So I want to thank you for your engagement. I need your support. We need your support. We have our service, which is DG MENA, DG Middle East and North Africa plus Gulf. They are entry point for whatever you need. This is not closed book, so we are open to new initiatives, to new projects. So this is why I'm saying that this is living document. So whatever you think is important, at this moment we asked all 27 to contribute. I think almost all of them contributed to this action plan. So let's go on, let's work together, and let's try to find to make this Euro-Mediterranean region more interesting for investments, especially for those from Europe to invest in a southern neighborhood and in the Gulf, and vice versa, of course, if there is interest. And this is the best way how to bring peace, how to bring prosperity, and how to bring security. I will repeat, for us, the way forward is diplomacy, dialogue, and de-escalation. So nobody is in favor of this situation, but unfortunately it is as it is. Sometimes we don't have that influence, but Europe wants to be influential. Europe is trying to have influence not only in the region, but also globally. And this is our role. So we are a geopolitical commission, and we are trying to do our utmost from our side. So thank you very much once again. Thank you for the parliaments, because parliaments, to conclude, they have, and you have, a crucial role to play in order to make this closer to our citizens, to make it closer to the citizens of the southern and eastern Mediterranean. So thank you once again for convening this meeting, and let's hope that we'll meet next time in person.
Thank you, Commissioner and dear colleagues. We have to conclude at this point. Let me say that as a union, we do have to insist on our agenda of peace and cooperation, but to be able to do so, we must ensure that our union is strong and an effective, credible actor, able to guarantee safety and security throughout Europe and our region. I regret, dear colleagues, for not being able to host you in person here in Nicosia, but thank you all for participating in this teleconference. Thank you to the interpreters who have helped us make this teleconference work. And the last word should go to Barry from Ireland, who will host the next meeting, hopefully in person. So, Barry, I will give you the chance to end this meeting.
And thank you, Harris, and congratulations on a wonderful session in, as we've all seen, very difficult circumstances, and to arrange this session in the time frame in which you did, I think deserves great credit to you and your team. So congratulations to the parliamentary element of the Cypriot presidency. It is, as you say, a shame we didn't get a chance to enjoy the famous Cypriot hospitality in person, but it has been excellent online. And we look forward in the second half of this year to reciprocating that for all of our colleagues across Europe. And I hope that you will all have an opportunity to join us in Dublin. The President's meeting of COSAC will take place on the 12th and 13th of July in Dublin Castle, and the plenary session on the 6th to the 8th of December. And we are very much looking forward to welcoming people. There will be obviously an opportunity, I hope, to do that in person, and we won't have the same difficulties that our Cypriot colleagues have had. But I hope also that people will take the opportunity to enjoy Irish hospitality, the Céad Míle Fáilte, the 100,000 welcomes that we are renowned for. And so we are looking forward to a productive session, also hopefully an enjoyable session, and there will be plenty of food and drink for everyone. So we look forward to welcoming you in Dublin. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all.